and then you can welcome your speakers. Sam, this is the wonderful Sam. If I ever got cancer again, I would have this as my speech and language therapist. Aww. Sam is incredible, and she should be in every hospital. And Fahida, who's at the back, should be every CNS's person in there. The two of them are fantastic. Anyone that's looking to recruit anywhere in the world, I'm their agent. Come and see me first. But they're absolutely fantastic. I'm now going to pass you over to you, and you're now going to do whatever you're going to do. Thank you very much.
I'm the welcome party for this afternoon. Hello, my name's Sam. I'm a head and neck cancer speech and language therapist at Torbay Hospital, and we are so proud to be able to host this conference here this year. We've been nagging Chris for years to bring it to Torbay, and it's just so wonderful that we've got such a lovely turnout as well, and I see a lot of familiar faces, and it's so lovely that we all get to catch up. So I'm really proud to be able to introduce our speakers for this afternoon, so come on up, ladies. So I'm going to introduce both of our lovely ladies. They're going to be on our question and answer panel. So we have Sarah Pearce, who's going to be talking about what we eat. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Very nice. And we have, this is Debs. Debs is our head and neck dietitian, so a few of you might recognise Debs. And she's going to be part of the panel talking about taste, as she's recently undergone some training with some specialists in Germany. So take it away, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for everyone being here. I found this morning fascinating. So I'm just going to do this. Yep. My name is Sarah Pearce. I work for a charity called Fifth Sense. It's a charity working with people with smell and taste dysfunctions. My background is I originally trained to be a nurse, qualified, decided it wasn't for me, went to university and did other things, came straight back into the third sector and health charities. So that's all I've done is worked in health charities. Fifth Sense was set up in 2012 by Duncan Boak, who's now our chief exec, who suffered a brain injury and lost his sense of smell afterwards, and it's never been regained. And he and Professor Carl Philpott were introduced. Carl's an ENT surgeon up at UEA, and he's a professor at the medical school there as well. And the work that we cover, really the core areas are support, education and research. So the fruit bowl. The fruit bowl is meant to represent, health, well-being and safety, because when people lose their sense of smell and taste, lots of things happen in the body, in the brain, and the fruit bowl is representing those things. So, sorry about that, I'm not used to this little one, so bear with me. So with the fruit bowl representing this sort of hub here, when people cannot taste, they lose interest in food. That impacts on their nutrition. It impacts on their social life, their mental health, their physical health. Everything gets impacted. But people are unaware of how important the sense of smell is to feeling of well-being. And the impact of cancer and cancer treatment, this impacts on the smell receptors, can impact on the smell receptors, both the treatment and the cancer as well can have an impact on it. So many people are not aware that this may happen, and it may be the least of their worries at that time. However, once you start working through recovery and things, or hoping to work through recovery, the impact of the loss of smell and in the interruption in taste can affect how people move forward. There are other causes. I won't go through all of them. You can see them here. COVID-19 has brought to the fore the loss of smell and taste much further than it was before. Head injuries, I've already mentioned. It can help, but can happen as part of the aging process. Much as our eyes and our hearing go, we can get a reduced sense of smell. I've already touched on cancer and medication and operations. Exposure to toxins, which not many people know. 20 years ago, Chicago Fire Department smell tested all of their firemen, discovered that 49% of them had lost their sense of smell because of the toxins that were involved in firefighting. And there is congenital anosmia, those people born without their olfactory bulb and who never can smell. So we call the smell disorders osmias. They're the different osmias. The one left with viral infections things is on anosmia, the total inability to smell. Parosmia, which I'm going to talk about a bit more in a minute, is a distorted smell. So things become really foul. Taste disorders are more unusual. So when people say they've lost their sense of taste, what they're meaning is they've lost their flavour perception, not their sense of taste. So the gusia is the inability to taste, and obviously that will happen. My experience of that is my father had mouth cancer, and he ended up not being able to taste anything after treatment. So it is, although rarer, it does obviously occur. So I wanted to just talk about parosmia, and you will see on your left-hand side this picture. When those of us that can smell and taste without any problems, when we look at those pictures, we have an idea that what the chicken will smell like in there, and we know what the wine will taste like, and what our loved ones will smell like, aftershaves, whatever it is, or babies, that baby smell. People with parosmia end up getting these distorted smells. These are the smells we've had reported by our members, Fifth Sense, the charity. So the real smell of sewage with certain foods. And it is really horrible. So we had our conference over the weekend, and we had to make sure things like tea and coffee were not put together, because coffee distorts to people with parosmia. We had to ask all our delegates not to wear perfume or aftershave because of that distortion for some people. Drink, whether it's alcohol or other drinks, often will taste of petrol or other chemicals. And it is quite distressing if you've got somebody you want to get close to, and actually, unless they have no smell at all on them, you cannot do it because the smell is so distorted and so bad. So I just want to look at this diagram here. So smell contributes towards the flavour of food, as I said a minute ago. And when we eat, when we put food in our mouth, what happens is we have what's called a retronasal olfaction. So it goes to the back of our mouth, up through the olfactory, up through the nasal passages, hits the olfactory bulb, which sits it's your part of your brain, but just slightly external to it, and it then sends all those messages through to the brain saying, this is what this tastes like, this is what the flavour is. And we enjoy our food in that sort of very three-dimensional way. When you've had treatment, whether it's for cancer or you've had a head injury, this can all be affected. This can be either interrupted or damaged so much that it doesn't actually work again. And what you're left with is taste. And taste is produced in the mouth, as I'm sure all of you know, by the taste buds. And there are 5 basic tastes: are sweet, sour, salt, bitter, and umami. And they're savoury, which is savoury, and they're the things that are left, but people still think that they cannot taste, but actually what they're doing is tasting, and they're not getting the flavour, which is, I think, from all that I've been told by people with smell and taste dysfunction, is probably the most difficult bit, is not having that flavour. And so smell loss, just to back that up, results in the loss of flavour perception. And that means that it impacts eating. People lose that interest in eating. So if we think back to that fruit bowl and how healthy eating is meant to be very good for us, if somebody has lost, they're living with cancer and other things, but then they lose that ability to have flavour and to smell, the impact on eating can be quite extreme. So we say smell is our neglected sense. We don't think about it unless somebody brings it up. It gives us it's essential to our health, well-being, and safety. It gives us enjoyment and pleasure. We have those emotional bonds to people. It's a vital early warning signal to dangers, for example, gas. It's closely linked to other areas of cognitive function. And I was just listening to a paper over at our conference that says that people who do smell, not smell testing, who sort of smell everyday things and smell training, that actually it does improve cognitive function. So it is important to all of those things. And one of the most common things of our members who have all the different, have smell and taste loss through all the different things that were listed earlier, their feeling of loss because it's something that's gone and may never come back. We undertook an impact of safety, well-being and health with our members. And these figures are fairly stark, I think. This is what happens, people feel happens when they have lost their sense of smell and taste, or taste has been affected, flavour. 92% of people have stopped enjoying food. It had been greatly reduced. But I think the final one, 54% whose relationships with family and friends have been affected. And I was listening, to the carer this morning, and the impact that things have on carers. But it's the same with people who have a smell and taste dysfunction. Is that often people do not understand what it is, and if they do, they think it'll pass. And with some people, it never does pass. So, sorry, that's changed colour. The impact of our reduced ability to smell and taste impacts all of these areas, and I think that our Debs will be talking, hopefully be answering questions. But nutrition is so important to us in whatever our journey is in life, and without the ability to smell and so get retroolfaction, its impact on nutrition, as I said earlier, is quite severe. People have fallen into two camps. They either stop eating because there's no interest to them, they haven't got the flavour and things, or they start eating highly processed foods. And highly processed foods are incredibly bad for people. They're high in salt, high in sugar, and people put on weight. So, a lot of people divide into those two things. It may eventually work its way through, but it's still got that sort of interim part. We know that it affects social life. What's the point of going out? Is one of the quotes that stands out to me. What's the point of going out and everyone goes out to have a meal? I can't eat because there's no enjoyment. That impact, lack of nutrition also impacts on physical health because you lack energy. Your immune system is maybe going to struggle to beat off whatever it is, whether you've got a cold or some other things. And it impacts on your safety. People, if you can't smell, you don't smell gas, you don't smell spoiled food, you don't smell smoke, all of those things, especially as people get older, if they're on their own, those things become much more important. And all of this impacts on people's well-being, psychologically. So I'm just going to run through a few things now. These are food tips, but I'm really hoping Debs is going to be taking on more of the questions because I'm not a dietitian. We say focus on physical sensations, and it may not apply to everyone, but some people it can. Texture, spiciness, the temperature. These are all things to help your taste buds as opposed to anything else. Create contrasts. So, don't have just one texture there. Think about multi-textures. So rice with an avocado, I think, is there, or an egg. They give you those different contrasts. Try different things and experiment. We had an OT student who's one of our members. She got COVID and she regained her sense of smell, and then it went and she got parosmia. So everything smelled awful. And so she experimented because one of the things she liked to have, healthy food, was scrambled egg for breakfast before she went out and was doing her training. And it was horrible. She said it just smelled like rotten flesh. So she separated the egg yolk from the egg white and found it was the egg white causing that distortion. So once she'd got rid of the egg white, she was able to eat her scrambled egg, which meant that she was eating nutritionally better than not eating anything at all, or eating stuff high in fat, high in sugar or salt. So it's try different things and experiment, especially if you have that sort of food distortion. And it's so important to keep a balanced diet, regardless of why you have a smell and taste loss. It is important to keep that balanced diet. We have lots of recipes, food tips and recipes. They come from people who have had cancer, who have lost their sense of smell through a head injury, through aging. All of those people have contributed towards these different recipes and food tips. Smell training, we say it can help some people. The jury is out as to whether it helps everyone. And some people find it very disheartening to carry on smell training when nothing is changing at all. But it can help you, can help some people notice that their sense of smell may be coming back. Sarah McCartney, who's pictured here, is one of our champions. She's a perfumer, and she has a short video on our YouTube channel which talks about smell training, and she says use things in your house. Don't go out and buy special kits. You don't need the expenditure. Things like rosemary, rub them, it releases the essential oils. Same with citrus fruits, releasing those essential oils to smell. You can even use just beauty products in your house, or nice selling products, I would say, rather than other things. And really, you don't need to buy anything expensive to do that. So just going back to that safety survey, 85% of our members said they feared gas, fire, spoiled foods and toxins because they had no idea. So I'm just going to go through some of the things that we talk about and people find very, very useful. There's something called the Priority Services Register for all vulnerable people. If you're deemed vulnerable, you can join the Priority Services Register with your energy supplier. We're working with a gas supplier at the moment called Cadent, and although that you can go onto their website and find out who your distributor is and how you join. Joining this means that if there is a gas leak, if there's some other issues and you're deemed vulnerable, you will get extra help. And it's really worth joining. Get gas appliances serviced regularly, which most people know, but actually organising it sometimes, especially if there's a lot going on, it is more difficult. You can arrange for a lock-in cooking valve if that is suitable, and they are available. Cadent has them certainly. So your own gas. Cadent doesn't cover here. I know this because I live in Devon. So Cadent doesn't cover this area of the world, but it's Western or Wales and Western, I think, is the GDN here. But sort of just check. And check if your gas appliances have gas cut-off if the flame goes out, which most modern gas appliances do. So if your flame goes out, it will cut off automatically, so no gas will get in. And it is really important. Duncan, often, our CEO, talks about when he, after about 7-8 years after he'd lost his sense of smell, he lived in London, he was sharing a flat with a flatmate, and he'd come in from being out, having fun, had a cigarette in his hand and a lighter in his hand, walked around the flat, decided against it, and then his flatmate came in and opened every single window and said, the flat is just full of gas. And it doesn't matter how long you haven't had your sense of smell, people will still make that mistake of, all the gas is off, I can't smell it, and not think about it. And, one of our things is please do think about it. Don't frighten yourself, but be active, proactive. Get natural gas detectors fitted along with smoke and CO detectors. The smoke and CO are clearly ones that are easily available on the market. Natural gas detectors are more difficult. They are available, but they're very, very expensive. And they often plug in. And of course, if they're in a house, somebody's living in that house and it gets pulled out for somebody hoovering or whatever, then it's no point in having it. We are working with Cadent and they are trying to produce a much cheaper natural gas detector, and we're hoping it's going to be one that, like smoke detectors and CO detectors, actually is integral into your ceiling rather than having it plugged into a socket. And really simple one, after using a device or appliance, check that everything is turned off. It's, again, sounds simple, but if we're in a hurry, and a lot of people are in a hurry because their lives are very busy, we forget about that. Food safety, how to reduce the risk of sickness, food poisoning. Again, the amount of our members who give themselves food poisoning, even though a lot of them have not had a sense of smell for about 20 years, they still manage to poison themselves. So we have something called the designated nose. Have somebody, maybe a partner, child, an adult child, or somebody, neighbour if you're on your own, who you can say, shove under their nose something and say, is this all right? Is it off? Stick to the best before dates. I know that the supermarkets are trying to get rid of those, and we're fighting the other side by saying please don't, because not everyone can smell. But stick to those, don't go beyond them. Label food the day you open it. If you've just cooked something yourself, again, label it with the date so that you know when you can eat it by, it's safe to eat by. Look for visual signs such as discoloration and mould. Milk is the obvious one. You can always see when that's off. But carry on looking. This is another one that we talk about that people don't think about. When you're using cleaning products, those things smell. And if you have no sense of smell, you're never going to know that they may be overwhelming you. So you need to have well-ventilated rooms when you're cleaning. And don't mix products, read the labels, and wear protective clothing when you can't have your nose being your protector. Ensure that you take extra care in handling them. Keep those windows open. Well-being is really impacted. So some of the things we suggest is engage in interests that don't depend on smell or taste. So joining, a book club is one way of doing something that does not involve your sense of smell and taste. Self-care, take some time, go and have, a massage, as long as you can tell the person that you can't smell the massage oil, but just don't need to share with me what it smells like, just give me a massage. And engage with others, with your other senses. So I know members who, when they go for a walk, it's no good them enjoying the smells of the countryside, good or bad. Actually, they walk beside water and things now, because then that is bringing in their other senses, their sense of hearing. They've still got the visual, but they haven't got the smell. And reach out if you need help. There are support services available. I know that the Swallows, which is a fantastic charity, is there for people. But we also have support and information. We have peer support. We have information sheets. Everything is like the Swallows. Everything is freely available. And we do virtual Let's Talk Smell and Taste sessions. And we have a cross-section of people there talking about their experiences. And again, they may have cancers. So a lot of those members who have cancer have parosmia, so they have that distorted sense. But there are lots of different people with lots of different experiences, and it's a support group basically online. We have our YouTube channel, and I sort of whizzed through there because I think importantly it's nutrition that we need to be talking about, and how important it is. So if anyone wants to get in contact with me, there's my email address, and there's the email address of our support and information and our website. Please use them. So thank you. That's
Thank you, Sarah. That was lovely. Thank you. And I really liked how you talked about smell, taste and flavour, because, with the people that we work with, the majority of the people we work with will lose their sense of flavour during their treatment. Yeah. And we can help them if they're in pain. We can help them. We can nutritionally help them, calorific-wise. But when that flavour's gone, why would you want to put anything in your mouth and swallow it when it just tastes like sewage?
Yes, well, that's my father had mouth cancer, and one thing I remember is my marvellous stepmother spending 5 years basically changing his food the whole time, because he would get, that's foul, and he would, and she, I think, did a fantastic job. So I know from that experience how difficult it is for both the person caring for them and that person, because good wine and food was his love, so he'd lost them completely.
And it impacts on, like you say, in your life in such a wide way as well, because what do? Yeah. We put our day around food, don't we? And then all of a sudden all that's taken away. Yeah. So thank you, and I really look forward to learning more about the charity. I'm going to open it up to the floor if that's okay. So any questions? Yes. We've got a mic down the front.
Hello, my name's Jenny. I was wondering what practical advice you give for patients who have taste changes.
So if we're thinking about enhancing the flavours that are found in foods, we need to think about what state your mouth's in at that point, because most people in the room have either looked after people who've gone through treatment or have had treatment themselves, and the different treatments bring their own challenges. So we know that chemotherapy causes neuropathy in the nerves that help with the perception of taste, and so that's our first challenge. Has the person had chemotherapy? Are those nerves damaged? And do we need to think about ways that we can try and enhance foods to get and strengthen the nerves to try and improve their perception of taste again? radiotherapy damages the cells that help with the conduction of flavour, and also the damage of the taste buds that are in the mouth themselves. And the effect of a dry mouth on people's flavour perception is really difficult, because we know saliva is a carrier of flavour, we know that fat's a carrier of flavour, but often people's appetite for different foods is changes after they've had lots of treatment, particularly if they've had dietitians saying you need to add lots of butter to that to get the calories in, which I think we're probably all a little bit guilty of. But there's lots of things we can do practically to try and improve your sense of your perception of taste when you're eating a meal. So the first thing we can try, there was some really interesting research from Germany. A team there looked at, it's called the Taste2 trial, if you're interested in looking at the details of it. They looked at people who were experiencing taste changes after chemotherapy, and they did various intervention strategies. So they got people to smell essential oils. So they used lemon oil and clove oil for 15 seconds, smelling them both twice a day, or as often as they could manage to do. And they did that for a period of time, along with something called oil pulling, which is where you put about 10 mils of oil in your mouth, and it's any oil is absolutely fine. Choose one that you like the flavour of. So when I tried it myself, I used sesame oil because that was quite nice flavour to use if you have still got some perception of taste. But a really plain oil like rapeseed oil is fine. You hold that in your mouth for, and I know this sounds a bit extreme, up to 20 minutes, and use it as a rinse in your mouth. Like, keep moving it around your mouth, and it reacts with some of the compounds that are found in saliva to create a type of soap which helps to clean and change the bacteria that are found in your mouth. So while your mouth is very, very sore from treatment, or dry, or just not feeling like you're able to put normal foods into it like you maybe did before, you can try this oil pulling, and it can be really helpful for people. Don't swallow it. Really important. So when you spit it out, so I was there for 20 minutes, my husband's looking at me, what are you doing now? There's often experiments going on in the house trying to enhance flavour of foods. And when you spit it out, you'll see the liquid that from your mouth, the oil and the saliva combined, is a milky consistency. And lots of people in the room will have really minimal amounts of saliva, but you'll still see these changes. And we've had practically some excellent responses to oil pulling. So just give it a go. Start with just a couple of minutes initially if it feels uncomfortable, if it's not nice in your mouth, and only do things you feel are helping you. So we use a combination of essential oil smelling, which can really help with people practically, particularly just after treatment when they're still waiting for some of their sense of taste to return. And the evidence shows that it can be really effective for people in that period after they've had treatment. And the oil pulling as well can be really soothing. So it's really interesting emerging research on the oral microbiome. So we've all heard of the gut microbiome and the effect that antibiotics can have on it. You know the consequences of having antibiotics and how that can affect your health, particularly on your gut. Well, there's new evidence that says that what's going on in our mouth can impact on the type of mucositis we have if we were to have treatment, and also our ability to taste foods further on down the line. So the future is probably going to be looking at different ways of adjusting the bacteria that are found in our mouth to try and improve the condition of our mouth, perhaps our perception of taste, and the condition of our tissues. So practically, we think about essential oil smelling, which can be really, really helpful for people. That was proven in the group of chemotherapy patients in Germany. Further research coming, which is really exciting, and we're encouraging that locally. Oil pulling, and then using practical tips with flavours. So have a really good think about what flavours you can smell, or taste. Can you taste sweet? Because often people say everything tastes sweet, I can't bear any savoury foods. And we know after treatment one of the first flavours that comes back is sweetness, and you in the room may have experienced that as well. And so it's sort of utilising that flavour and making the most of it. So maybe adding things like vanilla extract to your food, which gives a different sort of a hint of sweetness, but not adding extra sugar to things. So if you stick to things that are familiar and sweet, you may find that very quickly you become malnourished and you get the wrong balance of nutrients. As Sarah was saying, often the easier to eat foods are ones that are ultra processed. They have emulsifiers and preservatives put in that give a very soft mouthfeel. If you think about the texture of a well-known burger chain's bread, if you think about it, it's very, very soft, it falls apart, it's not easy to eat if you don't have very much saliva, and we can cover that later on. But it's just thinking about the types of foods that you're eating and making sure that you're not always going straight for custard and puddings, and trying to make the nutritional content of the foods that you're having a little bit more balanced when the only flavour you can taste is sweet. If you're, there's some of the German research was looking at introducing different foods to try and trigger our perception of taste to come back. So they use things like sage tea to help enhance flavour, coffee if you're struggling with bitter flavours, and then they used in Germany salted pretzels, which the salt on them was really helpful for trying to improve that. You're trying to relearn to appreciate the flavours, because I'm not sure if people in the room can appreciate this, but sometimes people say to me the first 3 mouthfuls they have flavour and then it just stops. And it's that lack of saliva flow that can really affect that transference of those aromatic compounds that we rely on so much. So if that is happening to you, after 3 mouthfuls, stop and look at the condition of your mouth. What's happening? Is it dry in your mouth? Have you run out of steam with the food you're eating? Is the bread you've had just not the right consistency? Because we know that starchy carbohydrate foods, things like bread and potatoes, are very, very difficult to manage, because as your saliva flow reduces, so does your production of amylase, and amylase is the enzyme that's required to break down those carbohydrates, the starchy foods, and you end up with a coating in your mouth that's like wallpaper paste, and that can be really, really upsetting, and it ruins your meal. If you're halfway through a meal or just a couple of mouthfuls in, and suddenly your mouth is coated and you think, oh, there's just gacky in my mouth, it's really horrible. That's not going to encourage you to eat the rest of your meal. So stop at that point. Give your mouth a clean, give it a rinse, see if the oil pulling works for you. Try that. Give your mouth, get yourself in a different place psychologically, because we know it's distressing. You're experiencing a bereavement from food. That normal relationship you have, that happiness that's associated with food, is just stolen because of the consequences of treatment. And we know that's distressing, particularly for people around you who maybe provided meals. All of these factors are really, really do affect people's quality of life. So at that point, just stop, just take a pause, and maybe try a different food that's a different flavour. Have a couple of sips of water, try some xylitol containing mints, which can help stimulate saliva flow, and just sort of reset your expectations of the meal. Maybe reheat your meal if it's gone cold, because we know that food, if you're eating very slowly, when it goes cold, the consistency and texture changes. That can make it much harder to manage it as well. But I often say to people, try and create a different atmosphere in the room. Get a bit of distraction on, loud music, fun music, something that's going to change the mood, because it can be really distressing, and it's a difficult time, because food really is an emotional relationship that we have with it, and we need to acknowledge that this is going to be painful at times, and some of the strategies we can use to try and help reduce that and push forward. Is that okay for that? Yeah.
Thank you, Debs. I'm so lucky to have her on our team. Any other questions? Have we got time for more questions? Where's our timekeeper? Is he over there somewhere? Any other questions? I can't see.
There's one here.
I'm Amy, I'm one of the head and neck nurses. Thank you for answering that about the essential oils. That was really nicely put, because of something we use in our trust. But what about the laryngectomy community? So obviously we're disconnecting the upper airway from their main airway, so they're not going to use their ability to smell via their nose. Will things like the oil pulling technique work for our laryngectomy patients, or what other things are available for the community?
And I think that's really, really personal, depending on the condition of your mouth, because some people who've had a laryngectomy, depending on the fields of their radiotherapy, they may have also had radiotherapy to some of the tissues in their mouth, which again will affect and make it more complex to be able to eat and drink. So the oil pulling is always worth it. If it's safe for you to have things in your mouth, then it's always worth a try. But it's thinking about different flavours and using strength of flavours. So we know oil and fat carries flavour. So maybe thinking about using, if you're trying to have some potatoes, notoriously difficult texture to manage, particularly if you've had radiotherapy, using some tinned potatoes or little Jersey royal potatoes. You're looking for a waxy structure, and mashing those down. We talk about using pesto quite a lot, because you get the umami flavour from the Parmesan cheese, or if you're on a plant-based diet, there's some lovely vegan ones which use cashew nut as their base, and that the oil and the flavour of the basil can really help enhance things. But it is a difficult group, particularly the sense of smell, and everyone's perception of smell after they've had a laryngectomy is different. And so I think it's just looking after the condition of your mouth, trying to enjoy the foods and focusing on the foods that suit you best, and sometimes just bringing a bit of distraction into the room when you're trying to eat your meals, just so it's not all about the food.
Thank you, Debs. Any other questions for anybody at all? Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Thank you. Are you coming coming back, Phil?
I've just come to collect the cheque.
Oh, okay. You come back and I'll go.
Tommy's next, don't you? I believe. Otherwise, I'm up here for no reason. So our next speaker, I hope, is Tommy Walsh, who actually, I think, needs very little introduction whatsoever.
What do you expect to see out of a Torquay hotel bedroom window? And on it goes. Our next speaker is a builder. I hope he's better than the idiot that did the work for me. Are you listening, O'Reilly? He is perhaps best known for his presenting role in BBC's Ground Force. But he has featured in a myriad of television shows through the years. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tommy Walsh.
Thank you all very much. Very nice to be here today, and it's been quite a revelation for me, actually. It's the fact that there's a sort of joining of suppliers and receivers. So exactly who should grow this product and this treatment and hopefully make us all a lot better, me included. But first of all, I have to just correct Chris on something that he said earlier. And I don't want to be too finicky, but he said that I was an actor. I'm not an actor. I'm a genuine builder. I'm not pretending to be a builder. And I actually went to work with my dad from the age of 4 because I was one of 6 kids and we were all young and must have drove my mother mad. So he took me to work with him. He was a manufacturer of building blocks, what we call breeze blocks, early recyclers, if you like. When you burn coal, you get ashes left over. You mix those with cement and water and vibrate them into a mould and you've got building blocks. So we didn't know it, but we were the early green people, we were. But that's probably why I've got such a passion for building, is the fact that I've been doing it for so long. There's no blood in my veins anymore, just cement. But a lot of people often ask me, how did you make that transition into TV? Which is a bit disappointing, because I obviously don't think it was my wit and good looks, or they wouldn't ask the question. But I was working for a big BBC producer who lived in Hampstead, overlooking the swimming ponds at the back. And I started off doing just some small structural stuff, and I ended up refurbing the whole house, including some of the garden. So she said to me, would you like to have a look at this film this production that we're making, give me your opinion? And it was called Over the Garden Wall. And it was Alan Titchmarsh sitting on an umpire's chair while 2 next door neighbours had a one-day makeover on their garden. Well, it was much more interesting watching that paint dry that was on the wall, actually. I've got to say that. It just didn't work at all. So she said to me, Carol, well, what would you do if it were up to you? I said, well, very simple. I wouldn't try to do 2 gardens at once. I would just get someone away for a couple of days, do the garden up, and when they come back, surprise, surprise. She said, would you like to be on it? I said, no. I'm far too shy to want to be able to go on something like that. So I refused it 3 times. And I went home one night and I'd already told my kids and my wife that Carol, that's the name of the lady, had asked me to be in this new TV series. So this night came the following night, and my daughter Charlotte, who was 8 years of age, my eldest daughter, and she said to me, I was drinking a cup of tea, I'll never forget, leaning up against the cooker in the kitchen, drinking a cup of tea, and she was there playing, and she had this conversation with Dad. She said, Dad, she said, you'll have to go on the telly. I said, go on the telly? I said, why is that then? So she said, because I've had a bet with the boy at school who doesn't believe me. Now, we're not a gambling family. I don't gamble at all, you know. No. I said, you've had a bet with the boy at school? I said, how much you had a bet for? She went, £10. Well, I spat my tea out. I said, a tenner. I said, how are you going to possibly pay that back? She said, Daddy, I don't intend to lose. And it's the gospel truth. So I went to work, I told my wife, and she was laughing, and we were laughing so much. I went to work the next day, and I said to Carol, the producer, I told her what had happened, and she started laughing as well. And I said, because of that, I'll have a go at it. She said, well, it's not quite as simple as that. She said, you've got to have a screen test. And I thought, oh, I've seen what some of these screen tests are like. But I said, okay, I'll do the screen test. And that's where I met Charlie Dimmock. With his big head of hair, big feet. Yeah, and we hit it off there and then. And Alan joined us went much later when we started filming. On the first day of filming, he turned up, and that's when we met him. But they sent off the screen test to the BBC. They said sign them up, and the rest is history, effectively. Yeah, and it's been, one hell of a journey. But I've been doing television now for very, very close to 28 years. Don't ask me where that's gone. It's gone so quick. But the downer about it is that if they show some old programs of yours, you go, oh my goodness, I look about 12. That's just reminded me how bad I look now in the mirror. But I've had a very enjoyable time, and really such variety, given the opportunity to go travel the world, meet wonderful people, make some severe cock-ups. I'll tell you about a couple of those. But generally, it's just been a great opportunity for me, and I've travelled the world, and there's certain charities I've been able to endorse: breast cancer, the men's cancer, prostate cancer. Been patron of them for 25 years. British Heart Foundation, quite a load of things. But I've never been involved in a charity as intimate as this one, which is really good, the relationship between everyone who's here, between the interaction between each other. I think it may be because everybody has had to endure the problems of neck and head cancer in one way or another, me included actually, which leads me to tell you how it came about with me. I got a very bad chest infection, and this chest infection was severe, and they gave me some antibiotics, some special ones that reacted badly, and I had to stop them instantly or they would have killed me. That's how bad they were. But this chest infection changed into pneumonia and attacked my heart. And I remember waking up at the bottom of the stairs. Obviously the way I got there was tumble down it, but I don't remember it. And I was working on my daughter's house across the road from me, rebuilding her house. And I was doing a lot of work there on my own, which I realise now, I didn't at the time, but now I'm getting a bit older, I'm getting a bit wiser, that it's not a good idea to actually be doing in the construction industry when not on your own, because there is a risk that something could happen. Anyway, I was under the doctor, and they said, well, you've got atrial fibrillation as a result of the heart issues with the pneumonia, and also you may well have had a heart attack, which made you fall down the stairs. So things were looking a bit down, and then he just tested my neck. This is my GP. And he went, He said, there's a lump there. I said, where? He said, there. I said, oh, yeah, it's on the inside. He said, yes. He said, it's probably nothing. He said, but we'll just go and check it out and get a biopsy done on it. So I went to the hospital, did the biopsy, came back, and they said it's cancer. I'll never forget that. My wife was with me and we told it, and he said it to us in such a matter-of-fact way, this particular chap who was doing it, that it was something I've never forgotten. It was just, I think he needed probably a topping up on the bedside manner. You know, that's what I think he needed. But it was a shock, a big shock. And then I was told by the doctor that they knew what... I was transferred to Barts and the London hospital. They did an operation on me straight away. Now, the reason for this was very lucky because of COVID. I went there, and because I had to do all these tests for the anaesthetist, it would have been very difficult for me to actually be fitted in before COVID would have stopped me. But luckily, the anaesthetist spotted this watch on my wrist. And he said, let me take that for a minute. He took it and he went into it. And this gave him all the information that he wanted about my heartbeat and whether I was suitable for an operation to go under the anaesthetic. And he got enough information from there to sign the order for me to come in and have the operation. Otherwise, I might not have had the operation for a year, who knows? Not when COVID first came in, because it was a complete shutdown. So I was very lucky that I had the operation just probably a week or two before actual COVID set in and the game changed completely. And they decided the best thing to do was to cut me from there all the way round down here and up there like that and remove it, cut it out. And then they was going to give me radiotherapy. But when they cut it out, the kids came up to see me with my wife. They all came up with a new pet name for me, Zippy. It might seem a bit harsh, but that's just a reflection of our sense of humour, because when it's dark, you have to be funny. And so they still occasionally call me Zippy just to put a smile on their faces, you know. But the operation was a success. They were very pleased with it. And I was allowed to... I was after the operation, believe it or not, I think because I was fairly fit, that was what it was. But I was in pretty good shape. I was a bit heavy, but I was in pretty good shape. It wasn't too much fat. There was a lot of muscle there. It was just a little bit dormant. But it was, it all went off well. But then I had to leave it for a while before you had the radiotherapy. And I wasn't too sure about having it because they said this about this dry mouth thing. And I thought, well, I could drink more lager. And that might help, but it doesn't because it dehydrates you, makes you worse. But I thought about it anyway, what we were going to do. And I said, all right, well, what would you do if it were you? He said, I would have the radiotherapy, just to be sure. So I said, well, okay, if you know much more about it than I do, so obviously I'll listen to your advice, which is what I did. 4.5 stone later, in a matter of about, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and they had to drill a hole in here and put a pipe in and feed me through a pipe. And I lost 4.5 stone. Luckily, I've gained 1.5 stone back now, so I'm back to my marriage weight. This was how much I weighed when I got married. So I say to my wife, just to wind her up, are you the same weight as when you got married? Now, I won't say what she said, but she said, remember, who's going to cook for you, who's going to wash for you? But I had to have some time off work. Although I was busy at work filming, I had to have some time off. I mean, I've had no breaks in filming for the 27 years I've been in the business, except for this particular period. And I didn't work for about 8 months. This is the miracle part, I didn't drink any alcohol for nearly a year. just couldn't face it. So it had to be something really good that if a pint of beer couldn't encourage me to go and have it, the food would have to be good. But the food, I don't know what it was with this. The first 2 weeks of the radiotherapy was okay, but then it started to happen, and it was like an unconscious act. I didn't really want to stop eating or anything. It's just I couldn't eat, and I couldn't work out why. And we had the dietitians, all the girls from Barts and the London were terrific. I can't say anything but praise for the way they performed and pulled me back from the edge, because I wasn't sleeping, I was losing so much weight, I was feeling very down, which is unusual for me. So I suppose that's why it hit me even more. I think it was just being so rough and so sick. But as my wife said, and the kids, you've got to be positive, Dad. You know, don't succumb to it. You've got to fight it. Which is, they sort of must have made me, because I forced myself to sleep, which was a bit hard, but it worked eventually. Forced myself to eat. And then my wife came up with this smoothie, which is calorific, she calls it. And she puts all stuff in it, shots and that, not alcohol shots. That'd be an improvement, I might suggest that actually. But all these shots which have got a calorie loaded, and mix that in with, she puts double cream in it. Just, don't matter if it's got loads of calories, just to get a bit of weight, put a bit of meat behind it so I can get a bit of weight on me. Because she's found out through this that I burn about 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day. And that's because of the size of me, apparently. And the problem arose after the radiotherapy. It must have changed the dynamics inside me somehow, that now I burn. So I've got a Rhodesian Ridgeback who's about that big, and he has to be walked twice a day. So I walk him, and he has to have a good walk. So that keeps me fit, keeps me trim, but it's not something I can explain. So I don't know, if I can't explain it and they can't explain it to me, how can we actually fix it? Can't. But anyway, we persevered with it and tried lots of different types of food and diet. One of the strange things about it, I don't know whether this has happened to anyone here, that before I got this disease, the food and taste I had, what I liked, after I've had this disease and been repaired, the things I used to like, I don't like. The things I never used to like, I do like. I used to have a sweet tooth, now I've got a savoury tooth. Has that happened to anybody else here? Yeah? It's a very strange thing to do because, you know, when you're quite methodical, you're used to doing things a certain way. I'm a bit OCD like that, you know, do it in the same pattern, get up the same way, bath the same way, shower the same way, you know. And it's just strange for that to happen to someone who's that organised, and all of a sudden, and when you go out to a restaurant, apart from trying to avoid choking, because they've told me now that I've got this bit of bone growth, extra bone growth in my throat that's happened since I've had the treatment and the operation. So this bone growth, they reckon, might be stopping. I'm going to have to talk to you about this, actually. That this, take the opportunity. Don't look a horse in the mouth, that's for sure. Yeah, so it's affecting, they said, me swallowing my food. Have you known about that before? Extra bone growth? No. Another conundrum, that's what I've done. I've brought up another conundrum.
Modern miracle. I'd be surprised. But there might be. You've had a scan?
Well, they weren't going to operate, and that's what I had a scan for recently, but I had a chest infection again, so we've gone round the whole malarkey again, we're back to...
Scar tissue, loads of scar. Everyone I'm afraid there's a lot of scar tissue. Bones. We'd ruin bones all the time, and we'd do that.
This is what they said from looking at the CAT scan or the X-rays, and they've seen it, and they've said that's definite there. Anyway,
Okay.
it's something we'll sort out one way or t'other. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Now, let me tell you a couple of things that's happened to me. We did the ground force was so successful worldwide that in America they wanted us to send some copies out so they could show it in America, and the BBC said no, the Americans won't get the humour, they won't get the accents, and they're not really interested in gardens. I couldn't work this out because I've got family in Cleveland, Ohio, and they came over and they took back with them a compilation of videos, VHSs that we'd taped of the Ground Force show. There was about 30 shows. Anyway, so what they did, they put it on American VHS because it's not the same as the English one. And they had a big house, a big garden, and they used to have Ground Force nights. And people would come, and they'd have about 200 people per night when they showed the film nights, Ground Force nights. That's what it was called. And they all loved it to death. So that was great. So I said it would work. So in the end, the BBC allowed some of it to go to America on BBC America. And they showed it out there, and it did really well. Now what you've got to remember, though, is that BBC America is on the expensive cable network of $200 a month. And that's the one we was on. If we'd have been on the cheapest one, it would have been $50 a month. But we had, at our peak, we had 38 million viewers on the expensive cable network. And they reckon if we'd have gone on to the cheaper one, we'd have had 270 million viewers. That would have made a bit of a change to the balance, but we was on the dear one, and it did very well in America. So well that they asked us actually to go out there and actually make series for the American market that we could then sell back to the BBC and use it on the British market. For some reason, Alan Titchmarsh, he didn't want to go to America. He did the one journey after we did that first one in America after 9/11. We did one there, special, a very emotional one. But that's the only one that Alan would do. He wouldn't do it. He left, and then he left the show. I think maybe the stage got too crowded, you know. Can't be sure, but maybe that was it. But then, of course, we had to go out to America to make these series. And we'd do them in chunks of 4 or 6 and get them that way, work really hard and fast so that we wouldn't... I mean, I was the only one with of the crew and that with a family, so I wanted to make sure that I saw them. Anyway, it did really well in America. And we was filming in Washington, right? I'll never forget this. And we got an invite to go and meet the president at the White House. And I thought, this is amazing. No, this was George W. Bush, young George. Anyway, when we turned up there, the security was unbelievable. You couldn't get in with dandruff in there, let alone anything else. But we turned up, and he was such a charming man. He was lovely. And all the British consul people and the embassy people loved him to death because he was such a nice man. And I can verify that because he was so nice. So anyway, we did a lot of filming around and messing about. And we went out the back of the White House. It's huge. There's all these big, massive staircases and everything, all the external ones. And all this area, a big area for organised visits and all that people do. So he said, what we'll do, we're gonna film the president taking off in a helicopter. Because this was the time when he had to go to Kuwait. You know, there was problems, obviously, when he was at war. So he had to go to Kuwait, and he was flying from the White House lawn to Kuwait. That's the way he was going. So they said, what happens, though, when he takes off, when he flies, there's 3 helicopters, so they don't know which one he's in case they want to shoot it down, the terrorists. I said, excuse me, am I stupid, but why not shoot the 3? I think that's a sensible, fair comment, don't you think? They thought it was a fantastic strategy, and I'm going... Yes, so what they decided, our director, John Thornycroft, who was our director in all ground force here and in America, so we flew out, he decided to put us, there was me, Charlie Dimmock, Willie and Kirsty, the other 2 members of the team, some of you might remember them, and put us in with the press corps. So we were on that side, and then the crew went over to where the public were and shot that way so that they could see us waving. So he's going, wave to the president. So the president's walking up the stairs on the helicopter to get on, and we're all waving. We're a long way away. We're about 200 or 300 yards away, and we're waving. And as he's gone up, I could see the concern in his face. Who's waving at me from the press corps? That's never happened before. And as he's walked up the stairs, he's gone crack. He's hit his head over the door, lifted his legs up, and he's cleaned him out, and he's laying flat on the top of the staircase. And we went, oh, sugar, or something like that. And they said, luckily he wasn't hurt, and he wasn't upset about it. He was a bit humiliated, but he laughed about it. Can you imagine that, though, the first little foray out into the White House, and you nearly wipe out the president? So much for the 3 helicopters. But life's full of surprises, and my last memory of it was, do you remember whenever they used to make a public announcement, there was always that lectern? Yeah, that same place. And I thought that was a massive big room. Tiny. It was about as big as, not even as big as this central part here that we're on here. It just seems to look bigger. That's the way. And that's where, so they got me talking on there about what not to do when flying upstairs. Be aware of low heights, ceilings. So we did that piece, and that was in the American version of the film. Yes. So, again, moving on, and we can move on to Nelson Mandela. When we were told that we were going to do the Man of the Millennium, which he was at the time, in the year 2000. And when we had a fixer in the BBC who could get us an opportunity to maybe surprise Nelson Mandela. Well, that was it. When he was first mooted, there was nobody else was going to make it for me. That was it. Because if we didn't get that one, we could have had Clinton, Hillary and Bill Clinton's new house in New York to landscape that. But ironically, that's where Nelson Mandela stayed while we did his garden in South Africa. And he loved it. It was nice, and he was a wonderful man. He mentioned the BBC about 30 times in the first opening 50 seconds, you know. So then afterwards, when it was all over, he pulled me to one side, Nelson Mandela. So I had my opportunity to, have a conversation with this man and say something substantial about his life, because I'd read his book, Long Walk to Freedom, and I'd always followed him right through the 80s, the 90s and that, and well, he always was an interesting man. And I have to explain to you this, you have to get to know this. He had this ability, when he spoke, it was mesmerising. I know that's a common term used, but this is genuine. I've only ever met 2 people like that in my life. And when he speaks, it all goes quiet because everyone wants to listen to him. So, but it was just me and him. That was when there was a few people. When me and him were talking, I was fascinated talking. And he said, I promise you, Tommy, he said that as long as I'm alive and I'm here, he said, because I travel a lot around the world, I will keep this garden as beautiful as you've made it for me. Because that's the thing that kept him alive when he was locked up in Robben Island, was the fact he had a small bit of garden that they let him grow stuff in. And that's what kept his mental stability. So he said, I promise you that I will keep it as beautiful as you've left it to me. There's my opportunity. What did I say? What did I say? I said, you'd better, because I may be back. I didn't realise till after that he'd never seen the show. He thought he was being roughened up by some sort of garden mafia. So there was my opportunity to make history for me. And I suppose I did in one way. Not necessarily the right way, but yeah, so that's two presidents I've caused a problem to. And I met quite a few, President of Ethiopia. I met quite a few presidents. Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's very strange, the journey that you take in life and the path that you go down, and you come to a fork. Do you take it, yes or no? And then all of a sudden, it turns out to be a rich tapestry of loads of different things that have happened to you and memories. And these are not even really the really funny ones. I could tell you some more, but I don't know whether it might be a bit too close to the edge, some of them. But I have to say in general, I mean, I haven't just been doing Ground Force and other shows. I've been working solidly for all that time. And although Chris did say that I was an actor, and I say, no, I wasn't an actor. But I did actually make a movie. I played a hitman. Did you think I'm too soft for a hitman? I played a hitman, but I did say to him when we were discussing it, I said that I wouldn't do violence. He said, this is a hitman. I said, I know that, but too many kids watch our programmes, Ground Force and that. I said, I can't be showing them that I'm going to be starting cutting people, shooting them and all that. So I said, we either do it as a Billy Liar role or we do it with menace rather than violence. So they went for the menace. And the film was called One, O-N-E, and you can get it. It went on, was released to festivals around the world, you know, like them big film festivals. So I didn't do a tour with them, but they went round the world and it was well received. And it got a nice write-up I did, because I was the only amateur in a group of professionals. It's nice of them to say that. A backhanded compliment like that. But yes, so I made a movie, and I made it after I'd finished filming Ground Force in the day, up in Birmingham, and drove off, and we finished filming it about 3 o'clock in the morning. That was the second day. We did another day 3 months earlier, the only other day I had off. But yeah, if you get a chance, it might be worth a little watch. It was a sort of a road movie, a bit American in style, but it was shot in Wales. There you go. Yeah, so I did that. So another thing, and then the opportunity. I've written 6 books, and got second in Best Book of the Year award. Jamie Oliver he beat me, and he didn't even write his one. Someone wrote it for him. But I've also had a production company where I've produced some very successful series. So I've been both sides of the camera. But sometimes if I go that side of the camera, I always end up having to do both sides of the camera. Funny enough, that is. Saving on money, that's all it is. So as I say, it's been a rich tapestry so far, and at the moment I'm filming Homes Under the Hammer on a daily basis, and also a new series of Clean It and Fix It, which is, there's a new series in the can, the third series now ready to go out. So I don't know when they'll be putting it out, probably before Christmas sometime. But they've also got some stuff lined up for me for next year. So if I was thinking about retiring, I can think again. Because the alternative is I haven't been working for the last, filming for the last 3 weeks. It's very unusual that, but I haven't done it. But I've had so much work to do at home. She's made a list, my wife Marie, of all the things that need doing. And there are a few. I did rebuild the house completely, knocked it down and rebuilt it. And it's a marriage of old and new, because it's built in 1860. And I built it now, so it's got all the features are all been renewed. Everything's new. I took it down, rebuilt it with the same bricks. But I did it in Flemish bond with blocks on the inside, so it's thermally efficient. So that was the way to do it. They wanted to film it. I wouldn't let them, not in my own house. Although when we did the COVID came in, they were desperate, the BBC, for some daytime TV, stuff being done. So they phoned me up and said, is there any chance we can do some filming in your garden? I said, yeah. There's some things I had decking that I was beginning to go home a bit and rip it out, and we'd put paving down and change it all around. I fell off the step ladder. Broke 2 vertebrae in the back, couple of ribs, and I got a scar on here, which is about that long, right to the bone. And I only fell off 3 steps like that. You know what it was? Gardening. I had a flower basket, filled it up, and I'd soaked it with water so that it would go straight. Lifted it up. When I'm up the ladder, as I've reached out, it's kicked the ladder out from underneath me, and it's an aluminium ladder, and sliced my leg in nearly in half. Another visit down in London to the A&E. Yeah, there was a team of about 20 people waiting for me because I was so injured. Yeah, but I've done quite a colourful tapestry. A lot of people are saying to me, why don't you do your autobiography? I said, that should be written by somebody else because I'm not over yet. I think you should do it all in one compilation. You can't have different volumes of it, and do it as a ray from the grave. That can't be done. So, yeah, the future's looking still a bit rosy. All I've got to do is make sure that I get this back. Now, it will be 5 years in January. Unfortunately, there is a little postscript to this. I was due to be joining you all tonight and speaking at dinner. I would have told you a few more stories tonight. But unfortunately, I can't because I've got an urgent emergency appointment at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning back in London. Chest infection again. Had to go to the doctor. They sent me up the hospital for a CT scan. And they think there's a 3-centimetre tumour in the lung. So I've been trying to keep cheerful, and you've cheered me today anyway. Thank you very much for letting me reminisce and talk. And hopefully, I had to weigh up whether I was going to tell you about this or not, but I felt a little bit unfair if I was to leave here and I didn't tell you. That's why I'm going to have to go after this talk and won't be able to join you for a few beers tonight. But I would hope and be really pleased if you would have a few on my behalf. And on that note, just keep my fingers crossed, and if you wouldn't mind keeping yours crossed for me, hopefully I'll see you again in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
So much. I don't know if you want to take questions. I want to thank your daughter for taking that dodgy bet. I think it's been an amazing contribution for a great many of us over the years.
And I also think, from my point of view, that it proves that it doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, what colour you are. When this cancer gets you, it's going to get you. And I think, when people like yourself, who, is a household name and a bit of a star, and you come out and you talk, you're no different than us. And I think that's fantastic. And to give your time up.
I'm no different to any man in the street. We're all
And I knew that, what you were going through with yours, and, to still come today to do the talk, I think is phenomenal and shows the man that he is. And I do think he needs a round of applause, and all our wishes for tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
If you hadn't have had that news, I might have been in your ribs just so that you can then say that you're going to patron the Swallows, but I'll wait until you recover from this one, or it's a negative, and then I'll get you on our website.
Yes,
So,
okay.
But it's been a pleasure to meet you. I've met some stars, people like Brian Robson that's had the cancer, but this is one of the true ones that's actually come out of his house and come and talk to us all. And, I think that's phenomenal. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for that. And I do really, really wish you and the family all the best going forward. And I'm sure the strength that's inside there will get you through. I really do.
Appreciate that. I think the combination of the people that I've seen here today and last night, I think you've certainly got the formula right. And I've left a little message for you with John, what I think you should be doing and what you should be
I'm
getting.
not going on ground force. Jesus, I'm not taking
No,
your
you could go on there, but you'd have to be partners with Charlie Dimmock.
Hey, now you're talking. Now you're talking. There's only two problems with that. No, I'm not going to go there.
It's called Two Dimmocks, yes, that's where the problem lies.
No, but I just think you're a true gentleman, and I think it's been a privilege to be on the same stage with you. It's fantastic.
Well, the formula you've got here will work because with everyone pulling in the same direction, that's how you get the best solution.
Well, it's the same with
That's
the
the
family.
outcome.
These are our family. Everyone in this room is a family, and you're part of that family now, and you will have that
Pleasure to
strength of
meet
that
everyone.
family going forward. And we just hope through ourselves we can keep everyone updated. And we see in the news that it was all rubbish, and you sacked your surgeon, and now you've got a new one. He's cheaper.
Give it a go. Don't believe that bone nonsense. I wouldn't know.
So let's give him another round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Superstar. Thank you.
I have to go and
Yes, please. Yeah, come. In case you fall again. Fab. Where are we up to now? I haven't got a clue.
It's,
Where are we up to now? Anybody got any clues?
yeah, got a clue. No tea break.
No tea break.
Here we go.
Oh,
Believe it or not, even though you're on stage, we are actually quite a bit early.
Christ.
wow. Wow, now you're talking my language. So,
Here we-
all right, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about now. I don't know whether everyone's been on the new chair for radiotherapy in that room, but I've just been on that chair. And if you haven't had a chance to go on it, they need, by the end of tomorrow night, 10 patients to sit on that chair and give honest feedback. I've just sat on it, and I wish that chair was there when I done it. Have you seen the new mask that comes with that chair? All it is a piece of plastic that goes around here and holds you to the chair and a little bit up here. No full mask, no nothing. It's got to be worth going on there and giving you feedback. It takes about 10 minutes. The only thing I said to them was, it's not that comfortable. It's not like a nice mattress under your bum cheeks. It was a bit hard. They want the feedback from patients. It's the only way we're going to get that thing developed. But if that can get developed and get into hospitals, it's not going to affect our journey. We've already had it. But it's going to affect tomorrow's patient's journey. So please, if you get a chance tomorrow, sit on the damn thing, answer 6 questions. They can then put it into research. If it gets to the next stage, which I'm sure it will, you'll be invited to Sheffield. All expenses paid, I've been told. Top 5-star hotels, if Sheffield's got 5-star hotels, I'm not sure. So it could be somewhere between a 1 and a 5. I think you get paid over £3,000. But anyway, just try it. It's and I don't lie. It's not my style. But please go and try that chair. It's important because we've got an opportunity to change our radiotherapy for tomorrow. If you don't sit in the chair, we'll never be able to change it. So please go and try it. What else do I want to talk about? I'm trying to fill time. Do you want to dance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to open it up in a moment to the floor. We are now Sharon and I are now starting to plan next year's conference. As we finish tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, when we go home, we have a sleep. I'm not driving, by the way, so I don't drive when I'm asleep. I will sleep all the way home, apart from toilet breaks, which is another problem. But what I'm doing then next week, we start planning next year's conference. So from what you've seen so far, this conference, is there anything that anyone would like us to look at for next year?
Yeah, I don't think we heard enough from Debs.
Yeah? Okay.
Anyone agree with that?
In what way?
Right.
I wasn't in the room because I was sat on the chair practicing on the chair. But tell me more. Why? In what way?
I think nutrition is incredibly important, and I think we skipped over it rather briefly this afternoon.
Okay. So we have got Michael Caine here, not taking it away from Debs, obviously, but we do have Michael Caine here tomorrow. Not who blew the bloody doors off. Not that Michael Caine. We're not that good. But Michael Caine's the chef's coming, and he's going to talk about nutrition. We put him on second because obviously the star was here first. But he's going to talk about nutrition, so maybe from that point of view. I think he's going to come to the point that nutrition doesn't have to be boring. He's going to come to the fact that, nutrition can be a sexy food. You can enjoy it. You can do certain things with it. He's got a Michelin star or 1 or 2, and he's got an MBE and all the other stuff. But at the end of the day, it might come to that. So nutrition, I think, is a good one, and we'll take that aboard. Anybody else?
Bring back tables. I think last year when we had, when we were tables, I think it garners more conversation. Like professionals, we need to be able to have conversations with, the patients.
I think tables are a great idea. How can I phrase this? Where would you like me to stick them in a room like this? But I think it was we tried it, but we got about 50 people in the room. It's not an ideal room for tables, but we did enjoy tables last year, so a good one. Someone over here. Can we have the mic if possible? Because my hearing is not that great.
Thanks, Chris. Just something not directly related to the conference as such. This is my second year coming to Swallow, and I really enjoy it. One thing I wanted and had in my mind was, and there may be a reason that it gets organized during this period of sort of time of November, October. For people like me, I come all the way from London side. So I feel like if I come to such nice places which you guys arrange, making it in a summerish time, maybe we can enjoy work and family thing together. I had in my mind, so I thought I'll say there may be a reason of November time, but
What is wrong with November weather?
we all know that.
At lunchtime, all the sponsors are in there on their own, sweating under heat because you wanted heating on, and you were all stood outside in the swimming pool. So don't give me that about November. Wherever we go, 6 months before the conference, I go to church every Sunday and pray for good weather. And again, whoever's up there has not let me down.
Of course,
But it's a serious note. But the thing is also, our charity's birthday is every November.
Okay. I didn't know. I
So
thought there
our
may be a
birthday is
reason.
the 12th of November.
Okay.
So this year we're 11 years old. So it's always been built around those sort of times.
Sure.
And I hate firework night. I hate Halloween. I don't do Christmas. So I would rather do it when it's a
By
holiday
all
period.
means.
But it's a good point.
So-
Not that we'll listen, but it's a good point.
Now, as we get said, there is
So-
a reason to come back. That's enough.
That's fine. That's
Thank
fine. We'll
you.
bring sun lamps next year. So anybody else? Down here.
I don't want to offer them up, but I think it would be good to talk about our fantastic local Macmillan team,
Yep.
because actually they've given us so much money that has gone directly towards equipment that we use with our patients every week. So I'm a speech and language therapist, and they bought us some swallow rehabilitation devices that have improved our patients' ability to eat and drink greatly. And they've also bought us a very expensive piece of equipment that we use to assess people's swallowing, and that helps people move forward with their eating and drinking. So they're a really, at a local level, an absolutely brilliant source of support.
Perfect.
And do have a large impact on our patients. So it might be nice to hear from them or from us next year.
I totally agree with you. I think the local Macmillan teams, and the not so much the nurses, but the little teams, the volunteers that are in their sites, I think are fantastic. And I don't know whether the gentleman's still here, but the one after mine and Chris's comments come over to me and has pledged to break those barriers down. So I'm hoping next year, and I've given him a challenge, that next year we will say that after our conference last year, Macmillan now are working hand in hand. But
and they, as the head and neck support team at Torbay Hospital, so Sam, Fahida, myself, Amy, Leanne, we're all adopted by Macmillan, and so they do really support us.
I just
support
hope
our
that they do come out, and I appreciate that, and I am going to look at Macmillan next year. So, but we have now got a pledge to break those barriers down, and I don't think it should just be the local people. I think head office need to break those barriers, and once we can break that down, we're setting up a new group in Bath. So I have told them that I'm going to apply for a grant because I've been told I'm entitled to it. I hope I can come next year and say we actually got a grant. But at the moment, I'm feeling 99% certain I'll be told the same as I always do. They can have it as long as it's their own support group and not a Swallows group. Now, if it does it the other way, I'll be the first to put it on the website. But I take your point. They're a great organisation, and it's just unfortunate that me and Chris have tried and failed with them. So we're going to... But money's money. If someone wants to give me money, I'll be their best friend. But if they don't and don't want to help us, I can also not be their best friend, because I look after the patients, and that's all I'm interested in. But I appreciate what you said. So anybody else? One over there. If you can make your way there, and I'll take Chris. Hang on, Chris, can we get a mic? Because I know you've got a big gob on you, but...
Hi. I'm concerned about the patient pathway, particularly in the early stages, because for my own particular treatment, I was picked up early by the dentist down the road from me, who I see privately. There's a lot of people in this country who cannot see their dentists. There's a lot of men out there who are unable to be diagnosed early. And just as a coincidence, this morning I was reading on the train on the BBC website, there's an article in there about a patient, head and neck cancer patient, on the front page of the BBC News online. Have a read, all about the fact he was missed because he wasn't picked up early. So I don't know if that's something that you want to get into, but I think there's a gap there that needs to be addressed, and maybe we could hear from some dentists and how the NHS is actually closing that particular gap, because we're missing men.
So next year, and I'm not going to tell you where it is, because we don't tell you that till tomorrow, but hopefully that opportunity will be there next year, because we should be able to get a senior dentist, a junior dentist and a trainee dentist. And I think the only way we're going to create that change is to talk to the people that can change, and that's our students. Once we start talking to students, our next generation of dentists, that will help. Now, that article did come out this morning, and Sharon's had a phone call already, and I'm on the news tomorrow talking about that same subject. So they've already contacted me to go on news tomorrow to talk about it. So while you're all enjoying yourself tomorrow at 9:30, I'll be on the radio tomorrow talking about that problem. And it is a problem. And it is something think that we can raise next year at the venue we're going to be at next year. But a good point. It has to be addressed. and dentists and our dental nurses, whatever you want to call them, have our mouths open more than any other health professional service. And they should work in hand with people like Philip and his team, and they should be forced to make sure they do something and make sure they're in that pathway of referrals. I think there's a lot of work to be done, because dentists still tell me to this day that dental is not a health service, it's a business. When you put business in front of health, we've got a problem. So we need to break those barriers down. But between us all, we can do it. If everybody in this room, and I mean everybody, next time you go to your dentist, if it's an NHS dentist, if they don't do your oral screening and ask you the 5 questions and do the oral screening, then ask them if they're giving their money back, or do you get a discount because they've been paid to do it. The more we do that, the more they'll start doing it, because they are paid to do it. Yes, Steve?
Just a small point. The dentists will do the checks, but there aren't enough dentists. The problem lies with NHS England and the Department of Health. So if you haven't got a dentist, please go to your MP and say, what is the Department of Health, this government doing about providing dental care? They can't do the checks unless you can see an NHS dentist. That's the problem.
Yes, and also the dentists, can be a charge, and some people haven't got the money at the moment. They can't then see their GP. They can't. So there's a whole breakdown of this early awareness.
Steve has just said about, is there also an unwillingness in men to look for help?
No, come on.
As a roughy-tufty Marine, Royal Marine.
Look at us two.
You're right.
You're right.
We suck it up. Oh, and whinge as well at the same time. But, yeah.
Yeah, but you see, ladies don't realise they don't get man flu. Us men get man flu. So if we can deal with man flu, but you're right, we don't say anything. Unlike the ladies that, the first thing that's wrong, they're at a GP or they're somewhere else, But yeah, you're a good point. We don't talk about it. We haven't got handbags that we can put lots of things in. So I think there's a little bit, but yeah, you're right. Anybody else? So I've got to get a man up that's willing to talk. I've got to move to summer. I've got one up here now. This could be anything. Don't forget, next year.
What next year? All right. Very good point about the dentist. I mean, that's only a part of the problem. I think the bigger problem is most people have GPs, but medical students aren't provided enough training to identify or look for mouth cancer. And a lot of patients will go to them and get sent away with antifungals or antibiotics. And more we're seeing patients coming in very late because they've been seeing their GP for 6 months and the cancer wasn't picked up until it ended up with a dentist. So at least part of the core training is to identify that cancer. But in the medical school, I don't know what your experience is, but for example in Sheffield, they get 2 lectures on the whole head and neck, basically. So that is not enough to actually identify signs of head and neck cancer.
Ali, you're absolutely right. And I'll, as a 2-week wait, as part of my service is the 2-week wait service for, we see it for all sorts of cancers. I'm a head and neck cancer specialist, and the referral rate of 2-week waits has almost doubled since before COVID, and a lot of that is because people aren't seeing their GPs. So, I have the double is. To be honest, it sounds rotten, but it's sort of mostly nonsense. They haven't really. It's an easy referral, but I'm also seeing people who have been palmed off for months on end with antibiotics for lumps, bumps. It happens all the time, and I'm told, or they're told, but then I'm told by them that it's just a lump; it'll go away. And head and neck cancers are very rare. They're not very rare, are they? They're really. We're proof. It's not rare, it's becoming more common. There's not enough awareness of head and neck malignancy. Throughout, I met the health minister before, it was several years ago. He was a Tory health minister. We were in the changing room together. He came to look at some surgery. And
not golf.
Not golf, no. Yeah, we're in the changing room.
Just making sure.
And he had very small feet. But he said, "Look, I'm doing robotic surgery to take out tonsil cancer." And he said, "Can you get cancer in your tonsil?" Now, this is the Minister for Health. You know, he's come there to see robotic surgery for oropharyngeal cancer. And they said, can you get tonsil cancer? Round about the same time, I wrote to I can't remember the long name, the vaccination committee, saying about HPV for boys. And they said, but boys don't have cervixes. And then they said, oh, well, herd immunity, that worked well for COVID. And, you know, herd immunity, all the girls be vaccinated, so boys don't do it. Well, you know, boys don't always do it with girls. Boys, also the vaccinations in Europe.
Certainly in Parliament.
Yes. But yeah, so, and also you get on the Interrail or whatever it is, you go to other parts of the world which aren't vaccinated. You know, it took 10 years of the head and neck, you know, surgeons, oncologists badgering to get boys vaccinated. And the first time I wrote, they said, boys don't have cervixes. I go, no, eh? I'm not taking out their cervixes. So yeah, it's an incredible lack of knowledge, and in the general public, in medicine, politicians, and you know, we know about the top few, you know, the popular ones. So you know, the lung cancers, breast cancers, prostates. You know, then there's a whole heap. But the head and neck cancer, it's getting bigger. You know, we don't have, there's cervical cancer. You know, there's twice as many people can get oropharyngeal cancer, and do, than cervical cancer. And so and HPV has been the vaccine has been fantastic. But you know, we need to know more about it.
Well, I was told also, just to interrupt you there, but someone told me the other day that obviously in the UK, when I talk about the UK and maybe some of the European sites, a lot of men rather than ladies get the oral cancer. But you go to Scandinavia and places like that, it's 90% women and only 10% men. And I thought that was an amazing stat when you think that you get more women in other countries than men. And no one's ever looking at the reasons why. Is it, you know, and I think there's a lot of stuff. I mean, we've got some great researchers in, and there's a lady sat down there that Emma and I know that loves research. I think it's the most boring subject in the world, but she lives and dies on research and loves it. But I think research, and there's one at the back as well that loves, you know, we could all get together and understand a little bit more about, you know, why and how, and I don't think there's enough answers to the whys and the hows. In breast, we all know about breast, and everyone talks about it, because I think what they can do with a breast, they can bring a single mum out with 2 children wandering about and say she's got breast cancer and it's going to affect her children, and everyone starts being a little bit upset and suddenly money. But with us, you take me out and wheel me outside, and not many people feel the same way. And I think there's a lot of that goes on with head and neck. And they also still think you're a smoker and a drinker.
Yeah.
You must have smoked, you must have drank, you're over 55, you're old. What difference is it going to make if we sort you out? I think there's a lot of that still going on.
Yeah. And they just think it's rare. It's not. We don't advertise enough.
Yeah.
Basically, don't advertise enough. We all know about melanoma, but you know, it's vanishingly small compared to what head and neck's going through.
So next year, anybody else got any ideas? Oh, hang on, we got one over here. I'm being told by the boss.
Chris, thank you very much for what you've done so far. You and I got together about 5 years ago, you may remember. One thing is, got a voice and can't get a voice. As you know, Sue isn't able to talk. And we talked about AI this morning, which was very interesting in interpreting a very difficult voice into words. But what's going on in research to actually produce something which somebody like my wife can use or adapt? I mean, brain implants have been talked about. Can we hear more about that next year, about what's going on for people who can't get a voice to been able to do quite rightly what was said this morning, the small talk. I mean, for instance, we are learning signing now. That's a difficult thing to do. Maybe we could have a little bit about that next year as well. The other ways in which people who haven't got a voice because of throat cancer can communicate.
So my question back to you would be is, do we need to educate before they lose their voice? So in other words, there's millions and millions of people walking this earth today that are going to see someone like Philip in a few weeks' time to be told they're going to end up like Steve. But today, they have not got a clue. As far as they're concerned, they're out in that world, you know, they are speaking, they're talking, they're doing all sorts of wonderful things, and nothing's ever going to happen to you, is it? So maybe we need to do more work that you're prepared. So, you know, Richard talked about Google. I'm currently talking to Apple, who want the Swallows to be involved in the launch in December of their new talking machine on the Apple phone. Now, that's only going to help someone that is about to lose their voice. But I think everybody in this world should bank their voice. It costs nothing to bank a voice, but we never think to do it. Sam, you're an incredible speaker. You talk, you do everything. But if you lost your voice, you would be devastated. So why don't you bank your voice? Because it's never going to happen to you. Same as you. It's never going to happen to you, is it? Never. But you've been great speaking today, but I bet you've not even thought about banking your voice. But if we all banked our voice, hopefully then the future Sues of this world won't be in that position. But maybe AI and all the other stuff that's come in will help. But I don't know how it's going to help you today, but it's a conversation we can open up and see if we can get an answer. But the new Apple facility is phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. But it will only help if you've got a voice now. Or you've got a sister and you happen to live in Sunderland that all talk the same. Then you haven't got, oh, you're in Ireland, the wonderful Ireland, and I love Irish women that talk. I think they're phenomenal. I just go to jelly. So, but I think if we had an accent like that, then you could still do it, because you could get your sister or your brother to do it. But when you've got a wonderful northern accent like me that is like just very unique to me, then that's hard. I don't know the answers, but it's a good thing to open that subject.
You, it's not too bad because there's lots of recordings on YouTube and other places that can be used to create a voice. You going on and on for hours and days. But something similar might work for you if you've got any home movies or any weddings or anything else where you've got a bit of voice recording along with video. Now there are companies that actually use that to create a synthetic voice for you. So we spoke about things like Speak Unique, and
Speak Unique will do it, yeah.
Doing that, and they will create a synthetic voice for you or match your voice to you, where you whatever you type will be spoken in as similar to your voice as possible. So I think it's coming.
We had a young man that was going to become a laryngectomy patient, and his only concern was, how am I going to read stories to my children? I can't do it. So he banked his voice, and now he's using his bank voice to do it. We had another lady that didn't voice bank. The only thing they found was, going back 30 years, was an old tape, one of these round, well, I'm not that old, but you know, some people remember the tape that goes at the end. Found one of those. They give it to Speak Unique, and they created her voice on a phone that is as good as it was the day before she lost her voice. And now she's speaking through her mobile phone with her voice. So it can be done. So even though you've lost it now, if you could find some recording, Speak Unique would turn it into a voice. So
Right.
Right.
AAC equipment. And sometimes, you know,
So you, but something like funding is a different subject. It winds me up something rotten that you've still got postcoded funding. Because if you go to Scotland and you're about to lose your voice, for any disease, everything is funded, without a question. You can get voice recording, you can get voice AI, everything is funded by their National Health Service, completely funded. You go across the border and suddenly it becomes about money. And my argument always is, if it can be done in one hospital, in a so-called National Health Service, which we're far from a National Health Service, then it can be done in any hospital. And you're right, there are things out there, but again, this forum is about sharing those ideas. And if you've got places like that, if you let Sharon or I know, it will go on our website. And I don't mind putting on the website where all these different hubs are. They sometimes don't like that because it brings in an inquiry from London into somewhere else that really they've then got to deal with it. And again, it's about sharing that information. But Scotland, just move to Scotland and you can get what you want. And then when you've got it, move back down here. The only problem is you might get a Scottish accent, which could be a problem. So, but I think it's a great subject. I think it's something we need to look at. I've got here, Christmas lights are on. No, it's not. Lights are on a car, a black Ford, EX62 LXN. Anybody own it? I didn't think any of you would own a black Ford. Come on, I mean, we've got quality people in here, haven't we? A black Ford. Well, it's parked outside the front of the hotel. It's got a car parking ticket. It's got a wheel clamp, and you've left your lights on. So I hope you have a great trip home. So that's what I've just been told. And I've been told now I've got to wind up. But no, I'm going to keep going. Oh. So what are we on next now? We're on Wonderful Emma. It's Ali, isn't it? Now it'll be very short and sharp. Ali's under training at the moment.
Does anyone want this check?
Ali's under training.
I'll just put it here.
Yeah, don't lose that because I'm going on holiday next week.
Right. Hi everyone, it's me again, but this time... Oh, thank you. But this time I'll just be chairing this session, and I've got 3 great speakers. So Emma, Mike, where's Mike? There he is, and Alexandra. Oh, okay. So we'll just be talking about new technologies in cancer, head and neck cancer. I'm not sure what order you guys have agreed to go on. I think, Emma, you're first? Yeah, please.
I'm there first.
My God, you're ugly, aren't you? All right, we are back, are we? Our next speaker is the founder of Salivary Gland Cancer UK. She is a member of the International Rare Cancer Initiative and lots of other clever-sounding things. She's also got a master's in organizational psychology. Good grief, another psychologist. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Emma Kinloch.
Thank you. I love the way I emerged from behind the faulty towers. Right, how do I work this? Do I just press this? Okay, great. Hello everyone, I am indeed Emma, and I must say I feel that Tommy was a very hard act to follow. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I haven't met any presidents, and I haven't been on the telly, and I'm rubbish at gardening. However, I hope that to give you an insight into what we've done at Salivary Gland Cancer over the last 5 years, and to go to Chris Lewis's point from earlier when he was saying not much optimistic has happened in the last 5 years, I hope that this will demonstrate that there are pockets of optimism out there. So salivary gland cancers are rare. So Ali kindly showed us earlier that the prevalence of head and neck cancer diagnoses in the UK each year is about 12,500. For salivary gland cancers, it's about 700. That's 1 in 20, roughly, head and neck cancer patients have salivary gland cancers. And that in itself has an extra level of challenge above and beyond being a head and neck cancer. So primarily, salivary gland cancers are in the salivary glands in the head and neck area. And that is your parotid, your sublingual, your submandibular. They also occur in other secretory glands in other parts of the body. Your lacrimal gland, and some areas I'm not going to point to. The first one being the breast, and the second one being the vulva. They also occur in the skin, and they behave differently. So adenoid cystic carcinoma is one of the most common, and it grows along nerves. It's often asymptomatic, and head and neck cancer patients generally struggle enough to get diagnosed, but when you have no symptoms at all, it's even harder, obviously. There are also no risk factors, so they're complete equal opportunity cancers. They don't care what colour your skin is, where you were brought up, what age you are, what you eat, or what you've done. So there's no way of identifying somebody by their behaviour, their age, or their ethnicity. So to summarise, no known cause, there's also no known cure. They're really, really rare. And when I was diagnosed, frankly, no one really cared. And that was 11 years ago now. The second major issue for salivary gland cancers are that there aren't any approved drug therapies that work, and that includes chemotherapy. So patients have surgery and radiotherapy, and then they may go on to a trial if they're lucky, and sometimes we see patients that actually they do have chemo and it does work, but it doesn't work for all the others. So research is desperately needed, and we need to understand these cancers so that we can do research and move it all forward. So, sorry, patient, bear with me. I noticed no one else has had to use water on the stage, so I'm afraid I'm the first. So, to illustrate this, I thought I'd give you a couple of examples of a patient experience. So this patient is asymptomatic, they're out of context. This person was in their sort of middle, late 30s, and they had these sort of pains and shimmering in this side of their face. And GP said, oh, I'm not really sure about that, have some steroids. That didn't help. Went to the dentist, oh, when you grind your teeth, you know, and you've got a stressful job, have a gum card. So they did. And this kind of continued for about 18 months, 2 years, including a scan, which apparently there was nothing on. Anyway, eventually it's found out after this diagnostic odyssey that this person had a stage 4 adenoid cystic carcinoma, which had grown from their secretory glands in their hard palate all the way up to their skull base. And there are many stories of such difficult to diagnose patients on our website there. Second example, and this speaks to another key feature of adenoid cystic carcinoma, is that, I didn't know this was a loader, by the way, I thought it was going to come off the front. Anyway, typical patient journey. So you find that there's something here, you have an ultrasound, the cancer doesn't show up on the ultrasound. Now, because adenoid cystic carcinoma grows really slowly, it doesn't often show up on PETs either. So it is really difficult to diagnose from that perspective. Symptoms persist, MRI scan is done, and they show a mass on the floor of the mouth. Biopsy shows it's adenoid cystic carcinoma. By this point, the cancer's already metastasized to the lungs. So lungs are found through a CT scan, and oncologist chances it with some radiotherapy and some cisplatin. There's a partial response, which is actually quite good. 2017 to 2021, the disease progresses because there are no other treatment options. When you get to January 2022, it's getting even worse. You get added to a wait list for a trial, and then you start a new trial, and that may or may not be helpful. In this case, it wasn't. And then lenvatinib is a kind of go-to drug for people in this situation. So you can see this person has gone, for 7 years. They're still there. They've still got meds. They may still be living their life. But as one patient described it, they're standing on a burning platform. So I think I've been through quite a lot of this, what is challenging, but just to summarise, no risk factors, limited treatment options, lots of people living with and beyond with these diseases, and also if you've had radiotherapy, as we all know, the after effects of those, because we love radiotherapy, it helps save our lives, but it is the gift that keeps giving. And research and access to trials is really hard because there really haven't been that many trials open in the UK and beyond. And when you are doing research into a rare cancer, low patient numbers is a key issue. And going back to the point that was raised earlier, if you have lung, breast, prostate, colorectal, there are lots of you, which make trials easy. You are abundant with samples and with people to go into trials, all very easy. Combined with the fact that for salivary gland cancers, they don't all occur in the head and neck region, so you have got people that are in these different treatment pathways. If you are diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, that just means that you don't have those 3 markers that have been tested when your tumour was profiled. You might have adenoid cystic carcinoma, but there isn't currently a referral mechanism for these patients to get referred into a central salivary gland kind of area. But there might be now. Anyway, it's a massive urgent healthcare problem. So, what did we do? 5 years ago, nearly 5 years ago in April next year, myself as the patient advocate and Dr. Robert Metcalf as the medical oncologist, he works at the Christie in Manchester, came together to collaborate, and the definition of collaboration is the action of working with someone to actually produce something. So we produced a charity, and it was a real sort of back of the fag packet, really the wrong expression to use, sorry, back of a piece of paper at the kitchen table, and we are just delighted that 5 years later we are still going, and I'm going to tell you what we've done. But while I'm here and I remember, I just want to say a massive shout out to Chris and to Sharon, who have consistently supported us across these 5 years, me as an individual, the work that we've done, and the charity, and we will always be grateful. Thank you. So, and I really missed you at ESMO this year. You weren't there. So yes, Chris and I and ESMO, before I even had a charity and he had the Swallows, we sat in the sunlight at the European Society of Medical Oncology in Madrid, and I sat there going, and Chris drew diagrams for me about things that we could do. So yes, so that will never be forgotten, always remembered fondly. This is one of our gatherings. So we run regular gatherings now, and they are patient-led. That's by me and other people, to the point that was made earlier. And you can see that we have our patient community and we have our clinician community. That's Dr. Metcalf on the left. He's a medical oncologist. And on the right is Steve Churchill, who is a GP, and more about that in a minute. And through this collaboration, we all sat in a room, patients, researchers and clinicians, and not just from the MDT, from the allied health professional networks as well. And we said, well, what do we need to do for these cancers? And then we got on to how we're going to do it. And we produced 8 aims. And these 8 aims are like our 10 commandments. They are what drive us. They are the thinking behind the charity, they're what we fundraise about, and how we benchmark ourselves and our success. And I won't go through all of them in detail, but I'll go through them quickly. To support and provide information, because there's not that much information out there, and of course everyone needs support. To support advances in the understanding of living with and beyond these cancers. To improve the rate of early diagnosis. To optimise the pathways to diagnosis. To support the development of guidelines, to the discussion that we were just having. To understand the effectiveness of different types of radiotherapy. We've heard about protons, which we now have in the UK. There's also also a thing called 12-9 therapy, which you can get in Europe, and some of our patients have crowdfunded to get access to that. And we look at the development of surgical and radiotherapy treatments, and we get better outcomes for patients. And of course, the holy grail, the standard, the drug treatment that would work for all of us. So not much to do then. Anyway, this is kind of what we've been doing for 5 years, and this is what I feel like sometimes. I feel like I am the most boring person on the planet. All I seem to talk about is salivary gland cancers whenever I can. So we presented to the GPs at GP Pulse. I come to conferences when I'm allowed, like this, and Beacon for Rare Diseases, and ESMO and ASCO, as I've already mentioned. Basically, any time, and anyone that is interested, I will talk about salivary gland cancers too, but I can talk about other things just for the record. Dr. Metcalf is at the Christie, and there is a biobank there, and this is really key. For these cancers, where you don't really understand what's going on, what's driving them, we need patient tissue and blood samples. And they go into this biobank, where Dr. Metcalf is now taking UK-wide referrals, and he takes referrals from all over the UK, of all salivary gland cancers, so adenoid cystic, acidic cell, mucoepidermoid, all of them, all 23 of them, and from all different anatomical sites, not just head and neck, although the head and neck people are really the only ones that have supported and know about us at the moment. And it pushes forward research. And it is really one of the key ways in which research will advance. And we collaborate nationally and internationally, because obviously there aren't that many of us, that if you've got a few more in France and Spain, you want all of that information to come together. And to help patients understand why gene profiling and biobanking is important, we produce some leaflets. And I know lots of people yawn when you hear leaflet, but actually it's written in layman's terms. We co-produced it. It's got videos of people who have shared their samples and why they did it and how it's helped. And we've got a stall out there, so if you are interested in any way, please do come and talk to us and we can show you the leaflets. And then this biobank and the information that they've managed to gather has allowed the team in Manchester to publish some papers. I won't go into detail about these, but those are examples, and we've got more information on the stall. And the international collaboration. So as I've mentioned earlier, I am a member of the International Rare Cancers Initiative, also of the European Reference Network, And we're allowed to stay in Europe because as patient advocates, we're not paid. The clinicians were asked to after Brexit. Other research organisations that are focused on these cancers, like the ACCRF in the US, and anyone else worldwide that's interested in these cancers. It's my last slide. I couldn't get a picture of my dog, unfortunately, so I've improvised with that one. Some of the things we're doing, so to go back to the discussion we were having about dentists and GPs and primary care, we put our first grant out, which is hugely exciting for us, and it's still open until the 4th of December. So if you know anybody that would like to take on the task of writing some primary care guidelines for salivary gland cancers, and I don't just mean GPs, I mean dentists as well, and then get those through NICE, we're offering funding to do that because we think it will address one of the key unmet needs for our patient population. The National Cancer Research Institute, which you may have heard of, it unfortunately closed in January. Dr. Metcalf, myself, and actually Professor Karam to my right, are taking forward the salivary gland cancer work stream, and we'll be going to advert for people that are interested in the next few weeks. So watch out for that if you are interested, and we want people from across the board, including patients, allied health professionals, your traditional MDT, everyone we want to bring together. There's a new phase of research starting at the Christie after a recent project is finished, and we are, as I mentioned, celebrating 5 years, and we are mapping out exactly how we're going to do that, but I'm looking forward to it. And that's it for me. I just want to say thank you all for listening, and thank you all for everything that you do. Whether you are a patient, a caregiver, or a healthcare professional in whatever way, shape or form that is, you are here because you are interested, you are engaged, and you are making a difference. And I don't think we say thank you and well done to each other enough, so thank you and well done. And I'm here for any questions, and there's 2 members who have volunteered from our community to come and help, who are also here for questions, and thank you very much for listening.
I think we'll do all the questions in the end together. So I think, Mike, you're up next. I'm not sure what's the order. Is it Alex?
Alex dressed up as a lady, or a lady dressed up as Paul.
Yes, it is Alex.
Hello. Is that on? Or is that on? Is it annoying if I stand at both? No, okay. Yeah, the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that I am not Alexandra Langstaff from the Christie. That's very much my Saturday evening persona. Alex, unfortunately, from the Christie is not very well. She's not able to deliver this, so I'm going to be delivering this on her behalf. Therefore, these slides are not mine, so please go gentle on me. I've not delivered this presentation before, and I think my boss is in the room at the back there, so I need you to be nice to me as I run through this. So I'm here to talk about, where's the thing? It's down there. I'm here to talk about oral mucositis and the role of a therapy called photobiomodulation in the prevention and treatment of oral mucositis. What is oral mucositis? I imagine the majority of people in the room are somewhat familiar with oral mucositis. It is a common, debilitating, potentially serious treatment which is induced by potentially serious complication of head and neck cancer treatment. Almost every head and neck cancer patient is going to experience oral mucositis. There's probably plenty of people in this room who are familiar with that from their own experiences. The issues that a patient faces when confronted with mucositis, you can see there's the list we've got here, things like nausea and vomiting, halitosis, bleeding. I really want to focus in on pain, the pain that mucositis gives a patient, and also they have an inability to eat and drink because they struggle to swallow, they struggle to get things inside their mouth. And mucositis is also a clinically significant risk factor for sepsis as well. So mucositis is a problem for the patient experience when being treated for head and neck cancer. So just a slide to summarise what mucositis results in. Mucositis is induced by chemotherapy and or radiotherapy. Severe pain and additional complications. We have an issue around having to readmit patients into hospital to either manage their pain or because they are unable to nourish themselves. I think nutrition was something that was discussed earlier. They can't nourish themselves properly at home because they can't eat or drink. We mentioned risk of infection and sepsis. And there are physical, psychological, and social impacts as a result of the problems, and they can be obviously quite long-lasting. Okay, so what is photobiomodulation? So photobiomodulation is the application of light to tissue in order to generate some form of positive response in human cells. Essentially, it's an extremely profound anti-inflammatory photobiomodulation. To add a little bit of context to this, in 2018, photobiomodulation was recommended by NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, in the prevention and treatment of oral mucositis. Now, I will just quickly say at this point, I'm aware that what I'm going to be talking about in terms of the work that was done at the Christie is going to focus on the prevention side. There are people in the room here who obviously have already been through this and what have you. And there is a presentation tomorrow. There are 2 ladies at the back there. One of them is Emma Hallam from Nottingham. We've also got Nick Freeman from Leicester. Hi. Emma is going to be talking about late effects and how she works with patients who are removed from treatment, and we'll also be talking about the role that PBM plays in that. Nick will be talking about the on-treatment effects of PBM. So at the Christie, the focus was, and what I'm here to talk about, was a preventative. That's what we were looking at the Christie. So photobiomodulation essentially the application of light to tissue using the equipment that's pictured on those slides there. And we are outside, so you can come and have a closer look at it if you want to come and have a chat with us. It looks very egotistical, having a picture of myself up on there. Bear in mind, these were Alex Langstaff's slides. It isn't me who put pictures of himself on here. But this is here just to illustrate what we do. We treat extraorally and intraorally. That's where we apply the light. It's extremely simple to do. It's extremely quick. I look quite smart on those pictures. If not, I mean, I know I'm not the slimmest guy in the world, but they're quite condensed. Am I as chubby as that? You're not, yeah. the camera adds £10. So, yeah, that's just to illustrate how those photos were taken at the Christie, how easy it is to use. Just in terms of then, the PBM is evidenced up to its eyeballs. PBM is not new. It's been around for an awful long time. It's recommended as an adjunct to existing treatments for oral mucositis and is recommended by the Multinational Association of Supportive Care in Cancer. That's MASC. I mentioned NICE and also the International Society of Oral Oncology. There are over 700 published randomized control trials for the use of PBM in a range of medical applications. For oral mucositis, this number needs updating here. I'll feed back to Alex on that. 47 successful randomized clinical controlled trials for the use of PBM in the treatment and prevention of oral mucositis. That number is now at least 62, and that covers patients who are having chemotherapy, radiotherapy, pediatric as well as adult patients, and also hematology patients. Okie dokie then. So what was done at the Christie? After the NICE guidance was published in 2018, Thor, in their eternal wisdom and a little bit of naivety in regards to working with the NHS, were sort of the view that, right, that's it, NICE have recommended it, the NHS is going to start using it. That's absolutely not how it works, obviously. So eventually, Thor recruited me. Big thanks to Chris for that as well. I do owe him on a personal level for that. They recruited me to talk to the NHS. I've been working in head and neck, around head and neck oncology for 11 years at that point, so we're getting up to 13 years. So just to basically say, please go and work with the NHS to see if we can't roll this out to patients. So I travelled up and down the country talking to different trusts, the Christie being one of them. So what I'm presenting here, because this obviously was Alex's presentation, is just the Christie's data. There are findings from plenty of other trusts that I am able to share with you if you want to come and have a chat about it. So what they did was they took 11 patients. It was a small study, it's not the most robust clinical study you'll ever see in your life, but this is what sort of got us started. 11 patients being treated for base of tongue or tonsil cancer, and then matched the data against 11 matched controls to see what the difference was in a group given PBM and a group not given PBM. So we were going to measure the severity of their mucositis systems, the frequency and length of any unplanned admissions back into the hospital, the type and dose of medications that were required for pain management, and whether there were any further treatments or interventions such as NG tubes. Now, at the same time as I was having these conversations with Alexandra Langstaff about supporting the rollout of PBM for her patients, well, I was actually literally sat in Alex's office and I met this lady, Angela Hayes, who also works at the Christie. Angela's interest is in sustainability and green initiatives. The NHS is tasked with achieving net zero by 2040. That's a government target for the National Health Service. Healthcare in the world's largest economies is responsible for 4% of global emissions. That is more than shipping and it's more than aviation. So Angela's sort of interest is in these green areas. And Angela's point on this is that if healthcare were a country, it would be the world's 5th largest polluter. This is Sir Simon Stevens, who is the former CEO of NHS England. He has stated that there are avoidable deaths happening now that are attributable to climate change, and that climate change is a health emergency which presents the most profound long-term threat to the nation's health and threatens to undermine all the gains that have been made to public health over the last 50 years. So there is a direct correlation between sustainability and healthcare. So I was sat in this office with Alexandra Langstaff and just having a general chit-chat about what we were going to do for rolling out the PBM for patients. And Angela, we just happened to be in the room at the time, and she said, have you considered what the green benefits will be as well as the patient benefits for this? To which I said, no, absolutely not. And again, it looks very egotistical, having a stupid photo of me in there. Not my slides. This, to illustrate, it was a little bit of a wake-up moment for me because I hadn't considered that there might be benefits further to the benefits for patients and to NHS trusts. So what we did was, as well as having a look at the points we've just made, the data we were going to collect, we also measured environmental impacts of introducing PBM for patients as well. So that was an addendum to the clinical work. Okay. Results. We'll get into the results from the Christie. So again, I'm not going to pretend this is the most robust study in the world, but it's an adjunct to the existing randomised control trials that I've mentioned earlier, the NICE guidance and the stuff that's being done at other NHS trusts. Number of patients prescribed morphine. What you're looking at here is the blue bar is the patients who were not given photobiomodulation, and the orange bar is the control group who were given the photobiomodulation. All 11 patients who weren't given PBM were prescribed morphine. Only 4 in the PBM group. Clearly that tells us the patients are in nowhere near as much pain. So the quality of life for the patient is significantly improved. For a trust, they're not using as much morphine. So there is a cost saving there, and also they're not having to manage the side effects of the morphine as well. Time delay until morphine was prescribed. In the PBM group, it was prescribed 2 weeks later than it was in the non-PBM group. So again, less pain. Pain is occurring further on down the line. We're using less morphine. Pregabalin, same story. I know a lot of trusts don't use pregabalin, is what I tend to find when I talk, but the Christie do. So they gave us the pregabalin data as well. This was interesting. The number of patients who were still on morphine at the end of their 6 weeks of radiotherapy. By the way, I should mention the PBM, it only takes between 5 and 7 minutes to deliver, and it's delivered every day the patient comes in for their radiotherapy. So they just take 5 to 7 minutes, depending on, again, I can cover that in more detail, but 5 to 7 minutes before or after they go in for their radiotherapy in their own time, and they can treat themselves as well. It's not something that requires a great deal of clinical intervention, so I should mention that. Number of patients still on morphine at 6 weeks. There were 6 of them in the control group, only 2 of them in the PBM group. Clearly, we're having a profound effect on pain by using the PBM. This one was the one that really made the Christie sit up and take notice. It was the readmissions. Now, in the control group, they readmitted 10 of the 11 patients. That's high. But it's worth pointing out that is high. Yeah, I can see some people nodding at me. If you catch me on the stand, I'll talk to you in more detail about why it's so high in their control group. But the point is, they reduced that number from 10 to 3. They only readmitted 3 patients in the PBM group. So there's obviously a massive benefit to the trust in that regard, and we quantify that more by saying that those 10 patients took up 71 total bed days. The 3 patients in the PBM group only took up 8 bed days, an enormous bed day saving for this particular trust. So I'm working with them right now to begin the rollout of PBM on a wider scale for their patients, because obviously they stand to make a significant saving on the bed days. All that translated to, so the cost savings for the installation of the 1 unit just over the period whereby they had it on evaluation from us were £33,000. They projected at the Christie, because of the number of patients they've got, if they were to roll it out for all of the relevant patient population, they'd save over £500,000 a year for the trust. The carbon reduction, it's given here, there is, given more time, I can quantify for you more what the carbon reduction is in terms of number of car journeys and what the equivalent of number of cars taken off the road it is and what have you. But it was as a result, let me just check. Do you know what? I'll come back to the green thing in a second. So I told you I wouldn't be as slick as maybe Alex would have been if she'd have been up here doing it. So yeah, significant carbon savings as well. Patient feedback. Just a few sort of comments from patients. It was easy, and I would recommend it to others. One doctor remarked, I was better than he expected at this stage. The treatment itself was fine. It's not intrusive or complicated. It's just very easy and quick to complete the daily procedure. And I did not suffer from most of the really bad side effects from radiotherapy that the doctors thought I might. Point being here, as I go up and down the country, you'll generally find that patient tolerance is very high and patient concordance is very high. Patients seem to like it. They seem to note the benefit themselves. On the green thing then, so what happened was the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare, who are an organisation that some people in the room may not well be familiar with. They're an independent body that have been set up to try and help the NHS achieve this net zero target. They ran a competition inside the Christie, and Alexandra Langstaff, pictured, who should be stood here, is pictured with the award that she won as a result of this. She won the Green Award, and subsequently an article was published in the BMJ, greening the NHS, treating oral mucositis with photobiomodulation. Something that's actually the last slide on Alex's presentation. Something she's I guess maybe she was too modest to mention, but I'm definitely going to mention it, is that on Friday in Liverpool, we've got the Royal College of Nursing Awards, and Alexandra Langstaff is a finalist in the Royal College of Nursing Awards as a result of this piece of work that she did. Obviously, that being with our equipment, we're extremely proud of it. So there is a clear benefit to the patient as they undergo their radiotherapy. I know there are patients in this room to whom, obviously, you've been through your radiotherapy. This will be covered, and what perhaps PBM might be able to do for you tomorrow. Emma will be talking about it as she talks about late effects in her talk. But clearly we can make a benefit different to patients, and we can make a difference for trusts. We hope we're covering both angles. So, that's me. I was Alexandra Langstaff for the last 10 minutes or so thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Really interesting. And from one side effect to another, dry mouth. Not that I'm calling you a side effect, Mike. But another piece of work, really interesting and clever work that Mike and his team are doing in fighting dry mouth. Over to you, Mike.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Chris and Sharon, for inviting me. I'm excited to tell you about gene therapy for radiation-induced xerostomia. I'm quite pleased that this meeting has been so interactive. In America, we're told that our cousins across the Atlantic tend to be very reserved. So I was worried I was going to come in here and bomb asking for audience feedback, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So I'll look forward to answering your questions later, but I hope you will answer a few of mine as we go through this presentation with a show of hands. I work for a publicly traded company, and so I have to give you a forward-looking statement slide, which I'm not going to read. In simple English, what this says is that I'm going to tell you about some of the company's future plans. Those plans entail risk, and we don't know what the effect of the stock will be in the future. But if you're interested in our disclosures, you're welcome to talk to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission that has all of our documentation. So, there we go. Radiation-induced xerostomia, what we call RIX. May I ask, how many people sitting in the audience are survivors of head and neck cancer? Could you just put your hands up? Very good. Okay, it's great to see you here. Now, can I ask of those who had your hands up, how many of you suffer from xerostomia or dry mouth on a daily basis that makes a huge negative impact on your life? Okay. Okay, I'm definitely in the right place. So I don't need to tell you too much about this condition, and I know we have a very nice talk coming tomorrow that will go into it in greater detail. The one thing I will tell you is that you're very much not alone. This is a huge and prevalent problem. Just working from some of the data that Dr. Karam provided this morning, I can estimate that there's about 4,500 new people in the UK every year who develop what we call grade 2-3, that is moderate or severe late xerostomia. We know that after 18 months, if your xerostomia hasn't gotten better, it's very unlikely that it ever will. Those are the people that we are really focusing our clinical program on is, are you 18 months out and is it moderate or severe? There's actually enough people walking around in the UK today with this condition to fill Stamford Bridge Stadium. So lots of people with this condition. We also know that current treatment options are limited. Can I ask for a show of hands? How many people in the audience have been prescribed pilocarpine or cevimeline for your xerostomia? Okay, one. That's interesting. All right, so there is one drug approved. It's called pilocarpine. It was approved 30 years ago. Often not well tolerated. It works for a small subset of people. There are saliva substitutes, gels, sprays. I know there are people here who offer these kinds of remedies. I've heard of concoctions that people make up, gum and xylitol, even acupuncture. So everybody kind of finds their own thing to use, but nothing out there is disease modifying. Nothing can turn the salivary gland back on. So that's what we're working on with gene therapy. So I have the task of teaching you not only salivary gland physiology, but gene therapy in the next 8 to 9 minutes. Quite a daunting task, but one thing I have observed about cancer patients is that you pay attention and you do your research. So if you can learn particle physics this morning, I'm sure I can teach you these two things, all right? I need to, in order to teach you how we're trying to fix the salivary gland, I need to teach you how it works to begin with, all right? And the illustration I want you to think of is a cluster of grapes. The parotid gland looks like a cluster, very small cluster of grapes. You have these circular acinar crypts. They're made up of acinar cells, which normally make saliva, and then they're connected to ducts, which are analogous to the stems of a cluster of grapes, which take all that saliva and move it down into your mouth. And in fact, you can feel where your parotid gland, which sits about right here, thank you for the anatomical illustration earlier, empties into your mouth. You take your tongue and you put it on the inside of your cheek, right by the second molar on the upper, and you can feel just a little bit of a bump there. And if you can't find it, think for a minute about sucking on a lemon drop, and it'll get real big, all right? So when your brain thinks about a lemon drop or smells a steak, it sends cholinergic input to these acinar cells, and they actually will make themselves permeable, all right, on demand. And we all have water inside of us that wants to get out. It's called interstitial fluid. So if you push on a soft part of your flesh, it will bounce right back. Or if you've had the experience of walking or gardening and you have a blister, that's interstitial fluid that wants to get out that your skin is stopping. But the salivary gland has the ability to put water channels that selectively allow water alone, the molecule water, to flow across them. That's how you make saliva under normal circumstances. The ductal cells just carry it. They don't make it. So what happens after radiation is the cluster of grapes becomes a cluster of raisins. Acinar cells are exquisitely sensitive to radiation. And now we're having H&E stains for the second time today. I thought you would appreciate this. So the acinar cells are destroyed, most of them, but the ductal cells are actually intact. And what you can see on the right is that the ducts are still there, but they can't make saliva. So how do we fix this situation? We can go in through that opening that I just showed you and insert a tiny cannula, a little plastic tube. Doesn't hurt, and it's bloodless, and we can actually deliver genetic medicine directly to the epithelium of the salivary gland, okay? And we have done this many, many times. So the acinar cells are destroyed, and we now need to modify their function. So I'm going to teach you Gene Therapy 101, and I know you can understand it if I can explain it correctly. Gene therapy is predicated upon the use of naturally occurring viruses to deliver a foreign gene into a cell that it wouldn't normally make, okay? Human cells are incredibly resistant to foreign DNA. You eat a chicken sandwich, you don't express chicken DNA. And in fact, the only time that this occurs in nature is during conception and viral infection, all right? This is how viruses work. This diagram is Virology 101. This might be a coronavirus virion. This might be HIV. It's all the same. A virus is a box made of protein stuffed with genomic DNA. And what it does is it binds to the surface of a cell, whether that be hepatitis in the liver, HIV to blood cells. It becomes internalized, and the cell puts it into an intracellular trash compactor or composter to try to destroy it. But the virus breaks apart and disrupts that endosome, gets out into the cell, and it releases its DNA into the cell and tells the cell to do what? Make more viruses. That's how COVID happened to all of us, okay? So this is universal virology. Now what we can do in gene therapy is we can take a virus, pull out its genomic material, and put in whatever we want, okay? This is AAV that we use, adeno-associated virus. There are two gene therapies I know of in the UK that are approved. One is Luxturna, the other one is Zolgensma. If you want to ever hear about a miracle of modern medicine, learn the story of Zolgensma. Babies that used to die at 3 are now 9 and 10 years old on the monkey bars. We, at Mira, we produce these viral vectors, and we insert within the AAV a transgene for aquaporin 1, all right? So it gets into the cell. AAV is a very weird virus that we don't understand that well. Doesn't cause human disease, doesn't replicate in humans, it's just out there in nature. And so we can use it as a drug product. The product that we produce is actually an AAV vector expressing aquaporin 1. So why is aquaporin 1 so great? I'll tell you. Going back to this slide before, the acinar cells are mostly dead. They can't make saliva anymore, okay? Aquaporin 1 is inserted into the cell membrane and pokes little tiny holes in it so water can just ooze through all the time, all right? That's what happens. Now, normally your parotid gland doesn't do that. It will move these water channels in and out of the membrane when you need to eat a meal. But what is happening now is we've just kind of like put a few holes in the dike, if you can imagine that. All that interstitial fluid that wants to get out so bad can push its way out and trickle down into the mouth. Can't turn the faucet on and off anymore. It's just a little trickle, a little drip, okay? But that's what patients need, because those of you who experience xerostomia will likely agree it isn't during the meals that it's the worst. It's that hour by hour, minute by minute dryness, especially when you're asleep. How was that? Does everybody get that? Okay. All right, good. I know it's the last talk of the day, and I'm probably running a little bit long, but I just was so excited to teach you gene therapy. All right, so we have done this. The great news is we've done a phase 1 trial. We wrapped it up last March, just some months ago. And for those of you who are not familiar with clinical development, what we do when we put a new therapy into people for the first time, we do what's called an open-label dose escalation. Everybody gets the drug. Everybody knows they got the drug. We give it to 3 people, make sure it's safe, go to a higher dose and 3 more, make sure that's safe, and we keep going to a pre-specified maximum. And so that's what we did. In the first 4 dose cohorts, it was well tolerated. In that trial, we were giving the gene therapy to just 1 parotid gland of the 2. We then amended the protocol to bring on a second arm of the study where patients got it on both sides, all right? So because it's first in man, the primary endpoint is safety. We're looking at, is there any danger of this drug? So the trial is not powered to look at efficacy, but we do get a kind of a sneak peek at efficacy. So I want to talk to you about phase 1 results. We looked at safety, but then we looked at xerostomia. How do you measure xerostomia? There's only one way. If you experience xerostomia, you're the only one who knows it, okay? We can't objectively measure it. We have to ask you. So we use patient-reported outcome tools. And we also look at saliva flow rates pre- and post-treatment. Okay, so safety was very boring. We treated 24 participants. We saw no treatment-related serious adverse events. That's a very formal clinical term that refers to bad things like hospitalization, permanent disability, death, risk to life, etc. 6 of the 24 participants had adverse events. 13 of them were mild. One of them was moderate, and that was a cough. All resolved without sequelae, meaning they didn't get worse, and no one quit the study because of adverse events. So very boring, well-tolerated safety profile. We did not reach a maximum tolerated dose. In other words, we could have kept going, but we didn't. All right, so now I want to talk to you about xerostomia and salivary hypofunction briefly, because they're not the same thing, okay? Xerostomia happens because your salivary gland begins to fail and you can't make as much saliva as you need. But any of the clinicians in this room will give an anecdote of patients who were very dry, who didn't have severe xerostomia, or others who didn't look too bad in their mouths and do. Subjective xerostomia, objective saliva flow, and they don't always match up. What we care about is how you feel, right? I mean, your mouth could be gushing saliva. If you don't feel better, doesn't matter. So the main focus is on xerostomia. We have 2 patient-reported outcome tools that we use that I'll briefly describe. The first is an old one called the McMaster Global Rate of Change Questionnaire. It's very simple. Patient comes in for a visit. You say, Mrs. Smith, relative to before treatment, do you feel better, worse, or about the same today? If the patient feels better or worse, they can tell you how much better or worse on a 1 to 7 scale, with 2 being clinically significant. All right? So I'm just going to show you the data that we have. This shows you all 24 participants in the trial in this table, and this shows you the time of their visit, starting with day 90, 180, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. The point here is not that you look at every data point, but it's every visit was green or black. Black meaning the same. Nobody got worse. And people got a lot better. Interestingly enough, we saw that 10 out of the 12 in the bilateral treatment group described themselves as being better. And these are big changes on a 1 to 7 scale, as you can imagine. And those of you who experience xerostomia, how many times have you ever said, man, I feel better today? You know? These were really dramatic changes. Now, what was interesting is that when you pool all of the bilaterally treated patients and all of the unilaterally treated patients, the bilaterally treated patients were clearly a lot better. 4.1 on the 7-point scale. So going forward in phase 2, we will be doing bilateral treatment. This is the xerostomia questionnaire. This is a much more robust, you can ask a patient, are you better or worse? The FDA doesn't really go in for those kind of PROs anymore. They've really asked us to up our game. So this is a 8-question symptom inventory. The patient, for each question, can answer 0, doesn't bother me, to 10, it's the worst I can imagine. You add up the score, and you get a score between 0 and 80 of symptom burden. Mine's probably a 4, okay? The average patient in the study entered with about a 47 on this, all right? So again, green is a decrease in the xerostomia from baseline to visit date, which is what you would like to see. We did see a couple of instances here where patients were a little bit worse than baseline, but on an 80-point scale, there's a little bit of noise. Notice that everybody in the bilaterally treated cohort at 1 year felt better. Now, we cut it off at 8. We feel like you've got to be 8 points better for that to be a clinically meaningful improvement. Again, because of the noise, but pretty good. And again, just like the GRCQ, the bilaterals did better. And there was excellent correlation between the GRCQ and the XQ. So we think these are really genuine results. I'm not going to talk about saliva because I know we're running a little bit late here, and I'm the last presentation of the day. I'll simply say that what we're interested in is whole saliva unstimulated. As you're sitting there in your chair, how much saliva is in your mouth. Not when you're chewing or having a meal or anything like that. And the patients in this trial improved their whole saliva by 87%. Now, what was very interesting is the parotid gland shouldn't make unstimulated saliva. Remember what I told you earlier. So this sort of adds some, at least anecdotal evidence for the mechanism of action I told you about earlier. The parotid gland can't respond to your brain anymore. All it does is ooze fluid. But for these folks, it's pretty good. All right, so I'm going to skip the summary because this is what you want to know about. I'm delighted to announce that we are going to be we've opened a phase 2 trial, and we're going to be opening it in the UK. We hope to have it open in April. So that's why I'm here. We'd like to spread the word. This will be a typical phase 2 study. This is a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled. That means you don't know what you got, your doctor doesn't know what you got, and there will be an arm of the study where patients get just saline, as it were, okay? They will get the active drug later when the trial's over, but it's perfectly appropriate at this stage of clinical development to have a control group, all right? So there'll be 2 active doses, both of which are lower than we've already shown to be safe in humans, and then there will be a placebo group, all right? We will be adding 2 weeks of prophylactic steroid taper. In phase 1, we did not see clinically manifest signs of inflammation, but we thought we saw some subclinical and some antibody development. We want to make sure you have no response against the vector. So there will be prophylactic steroids, and we will be using the XQ, the xerostomia questionnaire, as the primary endpoint, all right? So inclusion and exclusion criteria. How do you get into this trial? This is all on clinicaltrials.gov. You can find it for your own reference. You need to be 3 years from your last radiotherapy. You have to have no recurrent cancer and never had parotid gland cancer. We are going to be, we've got a threshold for saliva flow rate that we're not disclosing. If you're on a sialagogue, which is one person in this room, you have to go off it and you have to stay off it, something like pilocarpine. We will be at screening making sure that you're cancer-free with a CT. What would exclude you from the trial? Malignancy, Sjogren's syndrome, if anyone's heard of that, it's dry mouth disease, active infection, and then we use a drug called glycopyrrolate, which exacerbates myasthenia gravis and closed-angle glaucoma, so if you have those, you can't participate. If you've smoked in the last 3 years, you can't participate. If you're, and this is the tough one for this crew, if you're misused alcohol for the last 3 years, you can't participate. I didn't say the last 3 hours. And then if you have poorly controlled diabetes. So I'm not going to cover this slide. I'm just going to tell you that the trial is open in the United States. We're opening in Canada next week. We are submitting, hopefully, to the MHRA in the coming weeks. My colleagues from the London office are supporting that. And we do hope to open this trial in the UK in the new year. This is the website. You can come and look at it. You can't yet pre-screen if you live in the UK, but we hope to move this forward as quickly as possible. This is my contact information. There's nothing more important to this program than patients. You can call my cell phone directly if you have any questions. And like I said, we've got a great support team in London as well. So, any questions? Oh, right.
Thanks a lot to all 3 of you, and for finishing the day with some positive optimism of things that are coming our way. Any questions from the audience? There's one here.
My question's for the photobiomodulation. What's the depth of the intraoral lollipop? I'm just thinking for our patients with trismus who've got reduced jaw opening, how wide would they have to be to fit that in?
Flipping it. No, I figured that. Can I be heard? Hi. Right, hold on a minute.
Just hold it in your hand.
Apologies for that. Right, so actually for trismus, what we recommend is to treat extraorally, to use the extraoral probe rather than the intraoral probe. Again, I can go into much more detail with that. We have clinical evidence to support the use of the extraoral probe in trismus as opposed to the lollipop, because the lollipop, obviously, the mouth isn't opening, might be a bit more difficult to get the lollipop in there. So yeah, we've got evidence to support use of the extraoral probe.
There's another question at the back.
It's just a question for Michael. You mentioned about obviously the increase in the flow rate of the saliva. Have you noticed any change in the actual quality of the saliva over that time as well? Because we know that as patients go further away from when they have the treatment, that can change from month to month, year to year.
Yeah, it's a good question, and the simple answer is no. So we have those samples banked. We have a plan to look at salivary mucins and amylase is probably the best marker of, quote, saliva quality. So we have those experiments planned, but we haven't carried them out yet.
One over there at the front, one at the front.
Yeah.
Come on, David. No, it's been a long day for you.
Apologies for the delay, sir.
Mike as well, actually. Looking at part of the exclusion criteria, locally we support patients with dry mouth with acupuncture service, which has proven to be quite successful to some of our patients, and I know there's a talk on it tomorrow. Part of your exclusion criteria, would you take patients who have previously tried acupuncture and haven't been successful because they've already technically been on something to help with that?
So the answer is that acupuncture is not an exclusion or inclusion criteria. Yeah.
Okay.
Shouldn't worry about that.
Perfect. Thank you.
This one here.
Mike. Whoa, you know the system. Wait for the mic.
Mike. Who squirts the stuff in? Don't want to confuse you with the medical jargon.
Yeah, I've never heard it put that way, but you know, in the U.S. we have a mixture of dentists and ENT surgeons who generally do it. You know, cannulating that duct is very, very important to the trial being successful. So we will usually encourage a site to recruit an ENT surgeon. In some instances, you'll even have radiologists who do cialoendoscopy, as long as you can get a cannula into the duct.
Thank you.
Wow. So that means you. You're insecurity.
That's the hope.
David, right at the other end of the room.
After that, I've got a question as well. I've got a few.
It's quite funny, this.
Just keep
Stop it. Stop being mean.
Fahid
is right next to them.
Use a few verbs and adjectives.
That gentleman at the back.
Right. Oh, which one do you want? Come
It's
on,
a race.
choice now. Come on, come on. Who's going to get there first?
Go here, put the mic near.
I think they're asking why do you use glycopyrrolate?
You see, if you'd have used mine, mine's the better one. You could all hear me, can't you?
Yeah, just the question is, that was a really interesting presentation. Why do you all use glycopyrrolate? Because it dries everything up. So when do you all and why do you use it?
Dries everything up, exactly that. So if we think of the salivary gland imperfectly as a sponge, if you want to wet it with your material, you want it dry first. You don't want residual saliva sitting in the gland because we're infusing the genetic medicine retrograde. So, and that is one of the things that the patients do not enjoy. Imagine having dry mouth and then going on glycopyrrolate. It's a tough couple hours, but it's necessary.
Your timing is really crucial because we use glycopyrrolate when we do endoscopies in certain patients. You get about a 20-minute window when it's when it starts to act. And then you have about another 15, 20 minutes where the secretions start again. So your timing of it is crucial. Otherwise, you're not going to get an accurate measure.
Right. So the salivary gland doesn't start up as quickly. We have a window of about 90 to 130 minutes once you give the IV push. So we haven't had a problem with it.
Right. I've got a few questions if no one else does.
I think, you know what, from a patient's perspective, I ain't got a clue what they're talking about. Anyway, sorry.
All you need to know is Mike is going to put something in your mouth and you feel better.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, he's not. He's going to squirt something in your mouth.
I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, so we were talking about pathways earlier and identification of cancers and getting the right treatment. I guess, Emma, that's even more of a challenge from our discussions with salivary gland cancers because all of them are different, the expertise isn't available everywhere. So how would you even go about standardizing that or helping with that?
Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. That's good, no microphone. Standardising procedures, well, I mean, that's one of the challenges. I mean, I think first of all we need some guidelines, and we need them to be as broad as possible, hence the grant. And it's education, and it's going back to the point that was made earlier about education at the level when people are learning. I mean, there are lots of rare disease organisations, for example, whether it's rare diseases, who are going into medical students and educating them about rare diseases. And I think that's where we need to get people so that they know from the get-go that these diseases are out there, and to the point that you're making about head and neck cancer, and not just GPs, not just medical students, dentists and everyone else that's involved. But it's a massive challenge. Recently, the ASCO and ESMO guidelines for salivary gland cancer treatment have both been published, and there are some differences because the glycosides of it are so unknown. There are some differences, and that reflects the differences in the healthcare systems as well, in some ways. So the challenges are many, but of course we should keep chipping away at them. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thank you. And Mike, all the fancy viruses that you're using, is there a potential for those to be used for actually treating salivary gland cancers? And if a patient has actually had a gland removed on one side, can you overcompensate by stimulating the gland on the other side?
Yeah. Okay, so
some thoughts at you.
Those are really good questions, but they don't have quick and simple answers. What I would say is there's been a lot that's been done with viruses in trying to treat cancer. There's a whole area called oncolytic viruses. AAV is not good for that because AAV doesn't kill anything. So it transfers genes. So, you're looking at adenovirus and other things like that that I worked earlier in my career on. In terms of the, I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Just overcompensating. So patients, I know one of the excluding criteria was if you've had a parotid removed, then you can't be included. But as a future extension, can you actually overstimulate the gland on the other side?
Right. It's a really interesting question. And it's one that I studied when I was an academic. For this stage of clinical development, we have our inclusion-exclusion criteria. If you've had parotid gland cancer, you can't participate now. Doesn't mean you can in the future, but this is how it goes. So when I was in academia, we would irradiate pigs on one side, and they would lose their function on both sides. The irradiated side, the right, would get bad first, and then the left side would kind of follow it. Then we would give them gene therapy, this gene therapy, on the right side, and the function would return on the right, but it would on the left as well, even though you didn't touch it. So there seems to be some sort of neurological coupling between the left and the right side. And this has been studied in human lactation. So nursing moms who have trouble with one breast sometimes will not be able to feed their child at all. There seems to be some sort of right to left, whether it's in the CNS or something we don't know. So we kind of thinking that maybe what's happening with these patients, maybe turning on some of the submandibular or sublingual. We don't have any clinical evidence for that, but it is an intriguing thought.
And
one question for me to Emma.
Just 1 minute.
So, if you was in the lift going up to a bedroom upstairs, and you were in a lift with Mike, who's very, very rich man from America, obviously.
Oh God.
And he offered you £1 million. What would you do with that £1 million within the charity? What's your biggest wish if someone just come along and said, "There's £1 million, Emma, get on with it and make a difference"? What would one thing you would do?
Well, the first thing I'd do would be call a group of researchers, clinicians and patients together to identify what we felt is the first big unmet need. But I can give you about 10 off the top of my head. A couple of trials we'd like to run, please, thanks very much. They would cost about $1 million. But what I'd actually do in that lift is hit the emergency stop button and ensure that I had time to download all of the ideas and priorities. Yes.
Yeah, I was asked the same question and I couldn't think of something, but then I didn't think about the emergency button. Maybe next time someone else as well. It'd be nice if both of us got £1 million, wouldn't it? And then that'd be fab. But
and we can make a real difference with that.
yes.
£2 million.
Yeah. Sorry.
We'll just go one last question.
This really isn't a question. I'm Chris's friend Ed. That's a game we played last night. This is an unsolicited endorsement. I was in the phase 1 study that Mike talked about, and all I can say from a survivor patient standpoint is try it. It's good.
Great.
So, thank you guys. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. Who's going to leave the stage? Thank you very much for dressing up as a lady. Big thank you to Ali for chairing. Thank you very much, sir. Fantastic. Thanks for putting me in my place. You can now leave the stage. That's it.
It's all right, I'll stay
Sorted.
with you.
Yeah. Mike, do you want to join us? We've got one more thing to do. I said to you this morning that whoever was doing tweets, if they put a picture on tweet, there was going to be a prize at the end. It has been picked. Have we got that picture? That's the picture that got chosen. So is Mark still here? Mark, there you go. You've now. I know you don't drink, so you don't want it, do you? So there's your prize. Thank you very much. Well done. So as it shows you there, guys, you haven't got to do a great picture. No, I'm only kidding. But tomorrow there's another prize. Please do it on the Twitter. And we are trending on Twitter at the moment, which is phenomenal, really, considering we're in Torquay and there are big, big stars out there, and they're a bit cheesed off with us at the moment because we're taking off Twitter at the top. So whether Mr. Twitter takes us down a step tomorrow or not, who knows? But if you keep tweeting and keep using the hashtag, who knows? So that's that one. Have you got anything to say before we close up? And then I'll close up.
I've had a lovely day. Couldn't say much more than that. I'll try and hashtag Kim Kardashian, see if that helps.
Perfect. So I hope you've all enjoyed it. It has been a long day, I know that. The ones that are going to the speakers' dinner tonight, unfortunately the restaurant has just told us they've run out of alcohol. So, and because obviously alcohol would cause a problem for tomorrow, then just go to Fahida's room because she has it all up in her room for some reason. What I would say is, Mike's phase 2 study, the biggest thing for any study that goes on is recruitment. When I spoke to Mike, I said to him that recruitment is not going to be a problem for this particular study. So I now, in my office, have got a waiting list of people that want to go on that study. If you want to just go on it or know more when it officially comes out, send me an email and say, put my name on the study. And when it actually gets officially to that stage, they will contact you all and obviously get you hopefully involved or not involved in the study. Because, as I say, I don't think recruitment would be a problem. I have dry mouth and I'll be one of the first to put my hand up and have a go at it. What have I got to lose? I've got nothing to lose, apart from maybe I might get my saliva back. If I do, then that's a bonus. If I don't, I'm no worse off. So please, just keep that in mind. So I think it's been a great day, personally. I'd like to say a massive big thank you to Sharon, who obviously has done a lot of work here. Thank you to our helpers around the room with our T-shirts on, which have done a great job. Thanks to Tom, who's been taking loads of photos. Thanks to our AV. I've got to say it because I go on and back tomorrow, but they have made some mistakes, but I put them right. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to, obviously, Laura, who has helped. It's been a great day. It's been an emotional day, and tomorrow we do it all over again. So hopefully you'll come back and enjoy tomorrow. We've got some great speakers on tomorrow and some great educational stuff, so please come back. Big thank you to our president who dressed up. So Tomorrow we go live to America. We've got a surgeon in America that is going to come live. He's going to be operated. He's going to be fancy dressed, and he's going to have the patient on the table. So you don't want to miss that one. And anyone that ever knows Arthur from America, I may not be too far away from the truth. So please come back tomorrow nice and bright and early. Don't forget to support our sponsors, and I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. That was a terrific day.